Chapter 1. The blank postcard February in New York can make a man believe in nothing except steam, soot, and the stubborn survival of the human race. The steam comes up from street grates like the city is trying to exhale without admitting it is tired. The soot sits on window ledges and collars as if it pays rent, and the human race, having decided that cold air is no reason to stop making appointments, keeps pushing through it all with briefcases and expressions that say, "I am late, and it is your fault." On that grey morning, I was in the front room of the brownstone on West 35th, doing what I do when Wolfe is not ready to be spoken to. I was sorting the mail. Fritz had brought it in on a silver tray, because Fritz brings everything in on a silver tray if it can fit. It is his quiet protest against modern life, and it has never failed. The brownstone was warm, which is not the same thing as cheerful, but it is close enough for breakfast. The radiator pipes clicked. Somewhere upstairs Wolfe was in the plant rooms, giving his orchids the kind of attention most men reserve for their wives or their lawyers. The smell of damp soil and green leaves drifted down faintly, the way a good cigar announces itself even before it is lit. The mail was ordinary, which always makes me suspicious. A grocery circular, a couple of letters with the blue corner cards of professional beggars, a bill from a dealer Wolfe claims is indispensable, and an envelope from Theodore Horseman that I recognized as a request for Wolfe to donate his name to some worthy committee. Wolfe donates money when he must, and his name when he is cornered, which is rare. Then I saw the postcard. It lay on top of the stack, as if it had insisted. The address side was plain except for the typed label with Mr. Nero Wolfe's name and our number. The stamp was genuine. The cancellation was clear. The card looked as if it had been mailed by someone who knew what he was doing and wanted to make sure the evidence survived. I turned it over and stared. No message, no greeting, no signature. Nothing except a neat date written low on the card, almost at the bottom edge, as if the writer had wanted it seen but not noticed. The 14th of February. The picture side showed a city bridge at dusk, lights reflecting on dark water. The sky was a bruised purple. The river looked thick and cold, which was accurate. It could have been one of 3 bridges depending on how sentimental the photographer was and how forgiving the viewer. He set it on the desk blotter in front of me. Fritz came in from the kitchen, his apron immaculate, carrying a coffee pot like it was a ceremonial object. "More bills, Archie?" he asked. "Mostly," I said, "and one piece of poetry." He glanced at the card. "A holiday, maybe, or an order." Fritz's eyebrows lifted slightly, which is the most drama Fritz allows himself before lunch. "It is for Mr. Wolfe. It is for the address," I said. "That is not the same as being meant for him." Fritz poured coffee and looked at the postcard again with the mild disapproval of a man who believes mail should contain words if it expects to be taken seriously. "I will tell Mr. Wolfe," he said. "You do that," I replied. "And if he is in a good mood, tell him I am innocent." Fritz's mouth twitched. He left, moving like a man who has been practicing dignity for 40 years and has no intention of losing it now. I picked up the card again, not because it had changed, but because my instinct dislikes emptiness. A blank postcard makes you want to fill it in yourself, and that is exactly why it is dangerous. The first rule of this business is never to accept a gift of imagination from an unknown sender. The typed address bothered me. It was not printed by a big machine like circular mail, but it was typed on a small label, clean and precise. That meant a public machine, not a private pen. A man who writes nothing but a date is a man avoiding handwriting, avoiding identification by letter forms, avoiding any link that can be traced. A label is impersonal. A label can be made at a shop, a station, a library, an office supply store, or any place where anonymity is sold cheaply and without questions. I was turning it over in my hands when Wolfe's voice came from the doorway, large and unhurried. "Good morning. Archie, you are scowling at the mail again." I looked up. Nero Wolfe filled the doorway without effort. He had been in the plant rooms, so he wore the old jacket he uses for soil and water. His face was calm in the way a judge's face is calm when the defendant is already guilty. His eyes, though, were alert. Orchids do that to him. They remind him that precision is rewarded. It is not the mail, I said. It is a postcard that has decided to be clever. Wolfe came in and sat in his chair as if the room had been waiting for him. He extended a hand without looking at it. "Give it to me," he said. I handed it over. Wolfe did not glance at the picture. First, he examined the stamp and cancellation. He turned the card slightly to catch the light on the printed label. He held it still for 3 seconds, then turned it and looked at the date on the blank side. "The 14th of February, he read aloud. "I can read too," I said. "That is unfortunate," Wolfe replied, and his mouth tightened slightly, which is as close as he comes to cheer before noon. He turned the card over and studied the picture side. He did not say which bridge it was. He did not need to. Not yet. He merely looked at it as if it were a specimen pinned under glass. The silence lasted long enough to be uncomfortable. Then he spoke. "The stamp is real," he said. "The cancellation is clear. The card was mailed intentionally. The silence is not omission, it is design." "Sure," I said, "and my barber cuts my hair intentionally." Wolfe's eyes flicked to me, annoyed. "Archie, you have the misfortune to confuse words with ideas. Pay attention. A blank postcard is a contradiction. A postcard is meant to be seen by many hands. It is public, therefore anyone who uses it to send a private message will avoid a message. He will instead send a signal." "A date," I said. "Exactly," Wolfe replied. "Silence is language when someone fears the wrong eyes." I watched him. Wolfe does not guess romance or threat because guessing irritates him. He calls it laziness. He prefers to build a structure and then walk through it. "You think it is an appointment," I said. Wolfe nodded. "An appointment disguised as nothing. The sender expects the recipient to know what is meant by the 14th of February and by that bridge at dusk. Or the sender expects the recipient to panic and hire you," I said. "That is possible," Wolfe said. "But panic would require urgency. This is calm. The date is written neatly, low on the card, like a quiet signature. The sender is not panicking, he is scheduling." I took a sip of coffee. The 14th of February is popular for trouble. People get sentimental and stupid. Wolfe's lips tightened. "You are again offering the world your imagination. Stop. We will not guess romance or threat. We will treat it as data." Wolfe extended the card toward me. "Examine the address label," he said. "What do you notice?" "It is typed," I said. "No handwriting, clean, a public machine." Wolfe's eyebrows lifted. "And what else?" I peered at it. The label read, "Mr. Nero Wolfe." Not just the name. Whoever prepared it knew Wolfe's preference for titles or used a directory entry. There was a tiny misalignment in the second line, the kind a manual typewriter makes when the typist feeds the paper slightly off. That suggested a manual typewriter, not a modern printer. "It is a typewriter," I said. "Manual," Wolfe nodded. "Therefore it was done where a manual typewriter is available and where a person can spend minutes without being questioned. That eliminates some locations and suggests others." "Like a library," I said. "Perhaps," Wolfe said. "Or a station office, or a small business, or a public lobby. We will not decide yet." He set the postcard on his desk and folded his hands. For a moment he looked very comfortable, which is the most dangerous posture Wolfe has. "Archie," he said, "you will find who would choose that bridge, that hour, and that date. You are assuming dusk." I pointed out. "The photograph is at dusk," Wolfe said. "It is unlikely the sender chose it at random. A bridge is not a flower. It is a location. A location implies a meeting." "And the 14th of February," I said. "A holiday." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "If you drift toward sentiment again, I will deprive you of dinner." "Yes, sir," I said. "Only people with schedules." "The sender," Wolfe continued, "expects recognition, either by the recipient or by someone who will intercept the card. We are that someone, therefore we must determine why. I frowned. You think it was meant for someone else? It was meant for this address, Wolfe said. But it may not have been meant for me. It may have been meant for you, or for Fritz, or for any person who can be expected to handle my mail. That is flattering, I said. Someone out there thinks I am important. Wolfe's gaze shifted to the telephone. Important enough to be used. Fritz. Fritz appeared. Wolfe held up the postcard. Did you see this before you gave it to Archie? Wolfe asked. No, sir, Fritz said. Only the address. And the date, Wolfe said. Fritz blinked. The date is on the picture. It is on the blank side, Wolfe corrected. I did not turn it over, Fritz admitted. You were not instructed, Wolfe said. Very well. Fritz withdrew. The first step, Wolfe said, is to identify the bridge. Sure, I said. I will consult my deep emotional connection to city infrastructure. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You will consult your eyes and your feet. Take the postcard. Visit the likely bridges, compare the view, determine which one matches. Then determine what is near that bridge that would matter to someone who sends silent appointments. That could take all day, I said. It may take longer, Wolfe replied. Also, find where a person could type an address label anonymously. Libraries, stations, shops. I took the postcard and tucked it into my pocket. I stood, then hesitated. What if it is a warning? I asked. The 14th of February. Bridge, dusk. Someone will be found. Wolfe looked at me, his expression steady. Then it is still an appointment. The only difference is who attends. We will attend first. I went to the front hall and shrugged into my coat. New York's grey morning waited outside like a bored policeman. Before I opened the door, I glanced back toward Wolfe's office. He was already settled behind his desk, the postcard's emptiness in front of him like a chess problem. The brownstone was quiet and warm. Wolfe would remain there because Wolfe believes thinking is a form of travel and prefers it to taxis. I stepped out into the cold, the postcard in my pocket, and felt the date like a small weight. The 14th of February. I started with the bridge that tourists photograph because it looks like a promise. The Queensborough has that neat steel geometry that makes a man feel orderly until he remembers he is standing above cold water. I took the subway up and walked to the approach, then held the postcard up and squinted like a man trying to read his future in steel beams. The view did not match. The lamps were wrong. That was enough. A bridge can be eliminated by one lamp, post the way a suspect can be eliminated by one alibi. I went downtown to the Brooklyn Bridge approach near City Hall, climbed to the pedestrian walk, and held the postcard up again. The alignment was close. The distinctive old globe lamp in the picture had its twin on the walkway. The skyline sat where it should. The curve of roadway lights matched. The river below was the same dark strip, Brooklyn Bridge. That meant the sender had chosen a place where a meeting can look like sightseeing, where a man can stand at dusk without being noticed, because half the city is doing the same thing, and where there are enough exits to make following difficult. I walked a short distance along the boards, not sightseeing, counting instead. 2 security cameras on poles, an emergency call box, benches that could hold a waiting person, stairways down to streets on either side. A meeting place with crowds, cameras, and escape routes, a neat package. By the time I got back to West 35th, the afternoon sky was the color of old paper. Fritz let me in with a glance that asked questions without asking them. Brooklyn, the pedestrian walk. Fritz nodded once. Mr. Wolfe is in the office. I went in. Wolfe looked up from his book with the faint irritation of a man who has been forced to acknowledge the world. It is Brooklyn Bridge, I said. Old globe lamps, same angle, easy crowd cover cameras. Exits. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Good, that narrows the appointment. Now you will determine who would choose that bridge, and why. Also, Archie, do not forget the typed label. Brooklyn Bridge is public. So is a public typewriter. The sender likes public spaces that provide private results. That is a method. I sat down, because I had learned that standing when Wolfe is thinking makes my legs ache for no reason. The 14th of February, I said. 12 days away. 12, Wolfe confirmed. We will not wait. An appointment is a promise. Promises can be broken. I dislike broken promises. He looked at the postcard again, and for a moment I could see why criminals fear him. It was not his bulk, not his scowl, not even his reputation. It was his refusal to be distracted by anything except the logic of what was in front of him. Archie, he said, begin with locations near that bridge, where a person could use a manual typewriter without leaving a private trace. Identify them. Then we will see who fears handwriting and prefers silence. That in Wolfe's mind was a simple assignment. In mine, it was a day of cold air, subway smells, and talking to strangers who resent being helpful. But it was also a beginning with a clean shape. A blank postcard, a neat date, a bridge at dusk, an appointment disguised as nothing. And if the sender thought silence would protect him, he had chosen the wrong address to send it to. Chapter 2, a bridge chosen on purpose. If there is a business in New York that has never been accused of honesty, it is the business of selling sentiment. You can buy affection by the dozen, sympathy in bulk, and courage in small sealed packages that fit in a coat pocket. Greeting cards and postcards are the city's cheapest theater, and most of them are written by people who fear saying anything aloud. The bridge postcard was not a greeting card, but it belonged to the same family. It was printed emotion with room for a human addition. Only in our case the room had been left blank, and that made it more expensive than any gilded love note. Wolfe had sent me out with instructions that sounded simple until you tried to do them in February wind. Identify the bridge, then identify the sender's preference for public machines and private meaning. I had already matched the photograph to the Brooklyn Bridge. The next step was to go where the card had come from, which meant starting with the tiny print. Most postcards have a line of small type somewhere that tells you who printed it and where it was sold, the way a well-dressed man's cuff tells you what tailor he trusts. On ours, the print was tucked down near the corner of the picture side. It named a shop in Lower Manhattan, a place that sounded like it sold postcards, cheap souvenirs, and the kind of miniature statues tourists buy when they want to prove to someone back home that they stood near a famous building. I took the subway downtown because taxis in winter are either unavailable or driven by men with personal feuds. Outside the station, the streets had that late morning look, half busy and half resentful. New York does not like being cold. It tolerates it the way it tolerates taxes. The postcard shop was on a narrow street with other small businesses, including a place that sold key duplicates and a bakery that smelled too good for the neighborhood. The shop's window was full of glossy rectangles, bridges, skyscrapers, yellow taxis, and faces of comedians who had been dead long enough to be safe. Inside, the place was warm and crowded with racks. A bell on the door announced me, and a man behind the counter looked up as if measuring whether I planned to steal a snow globe. He was short, grey-haired, and wore a sweater that had seen too many winters. His expression said that tourists had worn out his patience years ago, but his eyes were sharp. Sharp eyes are a form of insurance. I picked up a rack of bridge cards, found our exact picture, and held it up. "Morning," I said. "This one. How popular?" He glanced at it and shrugged. "Bridge, always popular. February, too. People like grey sky. Makes them feel deep." "That is depressing," I said. "It sells," he replied, not caring whether I approved. I bought one of the cards because a man asking questions without buying looks like trouble. Trouble is my occupation, but I prefer it to be disguised as commerce. As he rang me up, I said casually, "Summernown bought a lot of these recently." He paused with his hand on the register. The pause was small, but it existed. It was the kind of pause that tells you you have touched a fact. "How many is a lot?" he asked. "5, I said, as if guessing. His eyebrows rose. "Last week." "Yes, 5. That got my attention, because 5 is not a sentimental number. No one mails 5 postcards of the same bridge unless they are making an announcement or building an alibi. People send one card to a person they like and none to the people they owe. I leaned on the counter and gave him my best friendly face. Tourist, I suggested. He snorted. Tourist buys statue. Tourist buys skyline. Tourist buys 10 different cards to send to 10 different people. 5 same card is not tourist. Then who? I asked. He hesitated, then shrugged as if surrendering to the fact that I had paid for a postcard and therefore deserved a small truth. Man, he said. Not young, not old coat. Hat business style. He asked questions. What kind of questions? I asked. The shopkeeper's mouth tightened, and his eyes looked past me at the racks, as if the question itself annoyed him. Yes, he said, irritated. Like he wants picture that nobody notices. Like he wants to hide message in plain sight. I tell him, they all ordinary. People do not look, they buy, they write, they leave. He says no, ordinary. So I tell him bridge is ordinary. Everyone sees bridge. Nobody cares. And he bought 5 of these, I said. 5, the shopkeeper confirmed. Same bridge, same picture, he paid cash. Did he buy stamps? I asked. The shopkeeper shook his head. No stamps, only cards. I thanked him, left the shop, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment to let the cold air clear my head. 5 cards, ordinary at a glance. Hide meaning in plain sight. Our blank postcard suddenly felt less like a mystery and more like a system. A system is Wolfe's favorite word. It means you can predict behavior. I took the subway back to West 35th, and by the time I climbed our steps, my fingers were numb and my mood was sharp. Fritz let me in and took my coat with his usual unspoken judgment about men who go out in bad weather, voluntarily. Wolfe was in his office behind the desk, book open orchid room hours already completed. He looked up as if he had been expecting me, which he had. Well, he said, you have been among the public. I survived, I told him, mostly because the public did not notice me. That is not always true, Wolfe replied. I handed him the duplicate postcard and gave him the shopkeeper's story. Wolfe listened without moving, eyes fixed on my face. Not because he likes looking at me, but because he likes measuring the reliability of what he is hearing. When I finished, he did not comment on my interpretation. He never does if the facts are good. 5 cards, he said softly. That is not sentimental. No, I said. That is organized. The buyer asked which postcards look ordinary at a glance. Wolfe nodded once. A man who intends to hide meaning in plain sight. That is what the shopkeeper thought, I said. The shopkeeper is correct, Wolfe replied. Now the stamp placement. I blinked. The stamp placement. Yes, Wolfe said, and his tone made it clear he was not asking for my opinion. Bring me the original postcard. It was on his desk already, but Wolfe wanted it in his hands when he spoke of it. I slid it toward him. Wolfe studied the stamp and the cancellation again, then turned the card and examined the date. He held it close, then farther away, then tilted it to catch the light. Wolfe can look at ink like a botanist looks at a leaf. He sees pressure, direction, hesitation. What do you see? He asked. I see the 14th of February, I said. I also see a man with too much free time. Wolfe ignored that. Look at the ink, the pressure. I leaned in. The letters were neat, not fancy. The pen had been pressed firmly, enough to leave a faint indentation in the cardstock. Not a soft hand, not a shaky hand, a decisive writer, or a man trying to appear decisive. It was written firmly, I said. Correct, Wolfe replied. Now look before the one. I squinted, then saw it. A tiny dot, just before the 1 in 14. It was not a speck of dirt or a flaw in printing. It was ink. A dot, I said. A pause, Wolfe corrected. The pen hesitated before beginning the number. The writer wrote Feb, and a space, and then began the number. But he paused before forming the 1. That indicates uncertainty. About what? I asked. About whether the invitation would be accepted, Wolfe said. A man who is fully confident does not pause. He writes and moves on. That seems thin, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Archie, You have spent too much time with people who do not think. A pause is not proof. It is a suggestion. We collect suggestions until they form a structure. I nodded. He was right, and I hate it when he is right about something that makes my job harder. Now, Wolfe said, the postmark time. I glanced at the cancellation. It had the date and the time printed in the circle. I had noticed it, but not emphasized it, because I had been distracted by the blank message. After work hours, that implies the sender mailed it after his day's routine. He wanted the card in the system quickly, but he did not mail it at lunch or mid-afternoon. He mailed it when he could move without being observed by colleagues. Or he mailed it because that was when the box was empty, I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You are again offering random possibilities. Stop. We prefer the probability that he mailed it after work because he did not want his work location associated with it. I sat back. So we have a man who buys 5 identical postcards, chooses a picture that looks ordinary at a glance, avoids handwriting by using a typed label, writes only a date with firm pressure, pauses before the one, like a man who is unsure, and mails it late in the evening. Wolfe nodded. Yes, that sounds like someone who wants a meeting, I said, or someone who wants someone else to show up somewhere. Exactly, Wolfe said, and the bridge is public, which allows watchers. The date is the 14th of February, which allows camouflage. The city will be full of people making foolish appointments that day. One more person on a bridge will not be noticed. I frowned. So how do we find him? Wolfe's eyes were steady. By treating the bridge as a stage rehearsal. A rehearsal, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. If it is an invitation, someone will arrive early to practice being casual. I stared at him. You want me to stake out the Brooklyn Bridge for 2 weeks? No, Wolfe said, for 3 nights. 3, I repeated, suspicious. Wolfe nodded. 3 nights at dusk, you will watch who treats the bridge like routine. Not tourists, not lovers, not runners. A man who rehearses will appear, stand, walk, look, and leave. He will do it with the attention of a man checking sight lines. That sounds like your umbrella theory all over again, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. That theory was correct. Do not mock it. I am not mocking it, I said. I am remembering it. Umbrellas, bridges, blind corners. You have a fondness for geometry. Wolfe's voice was dry. I have a fondness for logic. Geometry is simply logic that has been civilized. Fritz appeared in the doorway with the afternoon tray, and for a moment the argument paused, because Fritz's tray has authority. Mr. Wolfe, Fritz said, your beer. Wolfe accepted it with satisfaction. A man cannot be expected to solve a mystery without refreshment. Wolfe believes, and he is probably right. As Fritz withdrew, Wolfe added, you will also note who carries postcards. I blinked. On a bridge at dusk. 5 identical postcards were purchased, Wolfe said. If the purchaser intends multiple invitations, he may carry cards, or he may carry the typed labels, or he may carry stamps. People who plan often carry their tools. That is a charming thought, I said. I will watch for men juggling postcards. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Archie, yes, sir. Be serious, he said. If the sender is attempting to communicate without words, he may use repetition. A man who mails 5 cards may mail more. He may even return to the shop. The bridge is a likely focus of his attention. Watch it. I stood. 3 nights, dusk. Wolfe nodded. Yes, and you will not attempt to force an encounter. You will observe. You are capable of it. That is the nicest insult you have given me all week, I said. Wolfe ignored that. As usual, the first night I went to the bridge with my collar up and my hands in my pockets, trying to look like a man who enjoyed being cold. The pedestrian walkway was busy even in February. Tourists with cameras, locals with coffee cups, couples pretending not to be couples, a few runners who hate their knees. The lights were coming on, and the river below looked like it did not care about human intentions. I walked the length of the first span slowly, stopping where the postcard's angle would place the photographer. The globe lamps were lit now, and the skyline beyond was grey and softened by distance. It was a beautiful view if you like your beauty with a hint of threat. I watched people. Most people are noisy even when they are silent. They fidget. They look around too much. They pose for photographs. They walk in patterns that show their purpose. A man with a purpose does not wander, he arrives. At 6:10 a man arrived. I noticed him because he did not look at the skyline. He did not look at the river. He looked at people, not with curiosity, but with assessment. His coat was dark, his hat plain, and his pace measured. He walked to the spot near the lamp post that matched the postcard's perspective and stopped. He leaned on the railing, not comfortably, but as if practicing the lean. He stood there for 2 minutes, then turned and walked away. He did not take a picture. He did not check his phone. He did not sigh with romantic appreciation. He simply occupied a place and then left it, the way a man tests a chair before buying it. I followed at a distance, because I am Archie Goodwin, and I have legs that Wolfe refuses to use. The man walked toward the Manhattan end, blending easily into the crowd. At the stairs down to the street he stopped, turned, and looked back up at the walkway, scanning it. Then he went down and disappeared into the city. I did not chase him further because Wolfe had told me to observe, not to improvise. Also, chasing a man into lower Manhattan at dusk in February is how you end up on the evening news. I returned to West 35th with the cold in my ears and a new fact in my pocket. Wolfe was in his office, of course. He had been there when I left, and he would be there when I died. The brownstone's warmth hit me like forgiveness. I told him what I had seen. Wolfe listened, beer in hand, eyes half closed in concentration. "A man rehearsing," he said when I finished. "That is what it felt like," I said. He practiced leaning on the railing like he was learning to look casual. Wolfe nodded. "Good, that supports the hypothesis. You will return tomorrow and the next night. If he is practicing, he will practice again, or someone else will." The man purchased 5 cards. He may have invited multiple people, different rehearsers, different watchers. I said, "If I see him again, you want me to follow?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "If you can follow without being seen, and without risking your safety. Yes, if not, you will note as much as possible. Height, build, gait, hat, coat, any distinguishing habit." "Like the way he leans," I said. "Precisely," Wolfe replied. "A man cannot easily change his body's preferences. He can change his words. He can leave a postcard blank, but his habits will speak." I went upstairs to my room, and as I took off my coat I thought about that blank postcard again. A date written low, a tiny dot of hesitation, a bridge that looks ordinary at a glance, and a man practicing how to be casual in a place where nobody is casual unless they are hiding something. If the sender believed silence would protect him, he had underestimated one thing. Silence can be language, and Wolfe is fluent. Chapter 3. The person who walks the bridge daily, the Brooklyn Bridge at dusk, has a way of making even an honest man feel as if he is in a play. The city turns on its lights in sections, not all at once, as if someone backstage is pulling levers with a tired hand. Windows brighten, then streets, then the small chains of headlights that make the river look like it is reflecting jewelry. The water stays dark and thick, indifferent to human illumination. It is the only thing in New York that does not try to sell itself. On the second night I went down there, the wind was sharper and the boards underfoot were slightly damp. I arrived early because Wolfe had said that if a man is invited to be casual, he will practice, and practice begins before the show. I had my collar up, my hat pulled low, and the kind of expression that says I am doing this because I enjoy being cold. No one believes that expression, but it helps. The crowd was typical. A few tourists still committed to the idea that winter is a challenge they can beat with a scarf and stubbornness. Couples pretending they were not couples, walking close but not touching, as if affection needs a permit. Runners who have decided pain is a hobby. A man with a camera on a tripod who was so serious he looked like he intended to photograph the concept of dusk. I walked to the lamppost that matched the postcard's angle and leaned on the railing myself, because if you want to catch a habit, You sometimes have to imitate it. I watched the flow of people, letting my eyes do the work, while my hands tried not to freeze in my pockets. The man I had followed the first night did not appear. That was disappointing in the way a missing tooth is disappointing. You want the pain to have a shape. Instead, the bridge offered me nothing but ordinary motion and city lights. Then, about 10 minutes after 6, I saw her. She did not announce herself. She did not drift. She did not pause for a photograph, or check her phone, or slow down to admire the skyline. She walked with a steady pace that belonged to a person who has walked this route often enough to stop noticing it. That kind of steadiness is rare on the bridge. Most people on the bridge are there to be on the bridge. She was there to get somewhere else. She wore a dark coat with a hood, gloves, and a scarf pulled up over her chin. The scarf made her face less distinct, but her gait was distinct enough. She held a tote bag close against her side, and the bag did not swing. It was held like a tool, not an accessory. When she reached the lamppost I had been watching, she stopped. Not for long, not dramatically. She simply paused, turned her head slightly, and looked down river. She counted something with her eyes, or checked something, or reminded herself that the water was still there. The pause lasted exactly a few seconds, then she resumed walking at the same steady pace. That was not sightseeing. That was not romance. That was routine. And routine is the kind of thing a secret message can land on without making a noise. I let her get 20 feet ahead, then followed at a distance. I did not want her to feel followed. A person who has a routine also has an instinct for being interrupted, and an interrupted routine can become suspicious fast. Halfway down the span I saw a vendor cart on the walkway, one of those little setups that appear whenever there is a crowd and a chance to sell warm drinks. The vendor had a small propane heater, paper cups, and the practiced voice of a man who has learned that tourists buy comfort by the ounce. I bought coffee that tasted like it had been brewed with a blunt instrument and asked him, casually, if he knew the steady walker. He glanced at the woman ahead, then back at me. His eyes had that look people get when they are deciding whether answering will get them involved. That lady, he said. Yeah, I said, she looks like she owns the bridge. He snorted. She walks it every day, not tourist, home. You know her, I said. He shrugged. I see people, I sell coffee. She buys sometimes, not always. Her name Lydia Grant. Grant, I repeated. What does she do? The vendor shrugged again, but this time it carried information. Editor works with words. She said so when she argued with me about the price. Editors argue about price. That made me smile despite the cold. It also made the blank postcard feel a shade more pointed. People who work with words are the last ones to send silence by accident. She lives where? I asked. The vendor nodded down the walkway. Brooklyn side, walks to Manhattan for work, walks back. Same time, same place, that lamp, she always looks. I think she checks the river. Maybe she likes it. Or maybe she is checking for someone, I said. The vendor shrugged. New York. Everyone checking something. That was a city philosophy in 6 words. I carried my coffee and continued following. Slower now. The woman reached the Brooklyn side stairs and descended without hesitation. She did not look back. She did not search the crowd. She moved like someone who expects the world to be consistent. I followed her down to the street level, then paused at the bottom as she turned onto the sidewalk. There was traffic noise, the normal grit of the city. A routine walker blends easily into that. I decided to introduce myself, not with my badge, because I do not have one, and not with my full purpose, because if you show a person your whole hand too early, you lose your advantage. Wolfe does not play poker. He plays chess. I do the walking while he does the playing. But I have learned a few rules. I caught up to her at the corner and matched pace beside her for a moment. Miss Grant, I said, lightly, as if we were acquaintances. She did not startle. She did not gasp. She simply turned her head slightly and looked at me with alert eyes above the scarf. Yes, she said. That alone told me something. Most people, when addressed by name by a stranger on a street in Brooklyn, will react. She did not. She reacted as if she had been waiting for someone to know her name. "My name is Archie Goodwin," I said. "I work for Nero Wolfe." Her eyes narrowed slightly. The alertness sharpened. Still not fear, not even annoyance. More like readiness. "I know who he is," she said. "That is convenient," I said. "Because I would hate to give a lecture on West 35th Street while we freeze." She studied me for a beat, then resumed walking. The fact that she did not tell me to go away was another fact. "I do not know why you are talking to me," she said. "I have a postcard," I told her. "Picture of the Brooklyn Bridge at dusk." Her stride did not falter, but her shoulder tightened slightly under the coat. It was a small change, a muscle deciding whether it should tense. "Lots of postcards have that picture," she said. "This one is blank," I replied. "Except for a date, the 14th of February. She stopped walking. That was the first true reaction, and it was enough to make me glad I had not tried this on the bridge itself, where she could have vanished into the crowd. She turned to face me fully. Her scarf covered her mouth, but her eyes did the speaking. "I did not send any postcard," she said. "I did not say you did," I replied. "I said I had one." Her gaze held mine. It was steady, not soft. An editor's gaze, maybe, used to judging whether words deserve space. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you walk the bridge daily," I said, "and because you stop at the same lamppost and look downriver for exactly a few seconds. That looks like more than sightseeing." She stared at me for a long moment, then exhaled through the scarf. "It is routine," she said. "Routines are useful," I said. "They are where secret messages land." Her eyes flicked once down the street, then back. "If you think someone is sending me messages, you are wrong." "I do not think," I said. "I ask." That made her eyes narrow again, but it also made her consider. She resumed walking, slower now, as if she had decided to talk while moving. "People like that. Movement makes confession feel less final." "You said the 14th of February, she said. "Yes." "And it is blank except for that date." "Yes." She nodded once, and that nod was not agreement. It was recognition. "One postcard," I prompted. "Last year," she said. "Blank, different date." I kept my voice casual. "Samey picture." She hesitated. "Not the same picture. It was a different bridge, a different photograph. But the same idea, silence, a date, nothing else." "That is interesting," I said. "What did you do?" Her eyes hardened slightly. I ignored it. "Did that work?" I asked. She gave a short laugh that contained no humor. "Number the person found another way." "You met them," I said. She glanced at me, then away. "Yes, on the bridge," I asked. She did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. "Summoner's way of asking to speak without leaving proof," she said finally, and her voice was flat now, as if she had said the phrase before and disliked it. "That is a good line," I said. "You write it." "I edit other people's lines," she replied. "I do not write my own." We walked another block. The streetlights were on now, and the air smelled like winter and traffic. Lydia Grant's face was still mostly hidden by scarf and hood, but her eyes were clear. "Who sent you the one last year?" I asked. Her eyes snapped to me. "Number, that is a strong." "No," I said. "It is the only kind worth saying," she replied. I nodded. "Then I will ask differently. Did you know the person?" She hesitated, then said, "Not well." "Did they want money?" I asked. "Numbered, did they want information?" I asked. She hesitated again, and that hesitation was louder than any answer. "They wanted a conversation," she said. "That is still information," I replied. "Conversations are often traded." She stopped at another corner and looked at me closely. "What does Nero Wolfe want?" she asked. "He wants to know why someone mailed a blank postcard to his house," I said, "and why they chose the Brooklyn Bridge at dusk, and why they wrote the 14th of February, like it was a quiet signature." Her eyes tightened. "If it was sent to his house, it may not be for him. That possibility has occurred to him," I said. "It has also occurred to me, which makes me feel less unique." Her gaze softened a fraction, not into friendliness, but into recognition of a shared burden. You handle his mail. Among other duties, I said. She looked down at the sidewalk for a moment, then back up. The person who sent it wants control. That is what silence is for. It forces you to supply meaning. That is something Wolfe would say, I admitted. Only he would make it sound like a law of nature. Lydia's eyes sharpened. You are not here by accident. No, I said. I am here because you are the only person on that bridge who treats the place like routine. And routines are where signals are placed, because they look like nothing to everyone else. She considered that, then nodded once. If you are right, someone will be watching me. Or watching the lamppost, I said. She glanced toward the direction of the bridge, then back. I do not like being watched. No one does, I said. Except performers, and even they hate it when the audience is hostile. She almost smiled, but the scarf hid it. What do you want from me? She asked. I want facts, I said. Did you receive a blank postcard last year? What date? What bridge? What happened after you ignored it? Her eyes tightened again. You ask for too much. I ask for enough, I corrected. She stood still for a moment. Then she said, it was the 3rd of March. Different bridge, a photograph of the Manhattan Bridge from the waterfront. Blank except for the date. I ignored it. 2 weeks later, a man approached me outside my office. He spoke to me as if we were acquaintances. He asked about a manuscript. A manuscript, I repeated. Yes, she said. He said I had seen it. He said it was important. He did not threaten, he implied. That is what men do when they want to keep their hands clean. What manuscript? I asked. Her eyes hardened. Number. All right, I said. Then I will ask this. Why did you ignore the postcard? Because I do not respond to anonymous demands, she said. I edit books. I do not take orders from blank paper. That is admirable, I said. Also dangerous. She nodded once, as if she did not need the warning. Do you think the same person sent this the 14th of February card? I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation was the editor in her, weighing probability. I do not know, she said. But the method is familiar. The blankness, the date, the public image. It is someone who likes plain sight, because plain sight offers deniability. Did you keep last year's postcard? I asked. Her eyes narrowed. Number, I destroyed it. Of course you did, I said, and I meant it. An editor knows what paper can do, and she knows what it can prove. Now, she said, I have answered more than I intended. What will you do with it? I will tell Wolfe, I said. He will decide what it means. She stared at me, and what do you think it means? I shrugged. I think someone is using postcards like a code. 5 cards bought, at least 1 mailed. Maybe more. Maybe to more than one person. I think the 14th of February is a meeting, or a deadline, and I think the person who is practicing casual at dusk is either the sender or someone waiting for the recipient. Her eyes held mine. Be careful on that bridge. I am always careful, I said. That was a lie, but it was close enough to be polite. She turned slightly as if to leave, then paused. If you are there again, she said, do not stand at the lamppost like you own it. That will make you visible to the wrong eyes. I will stand like I am lost, I said. That is my natural state. Her eyes narrowed, then softened a fraction. Good luck, Archie Goodwin. She walked away, steady pace restored, routine reassembled. I watched her go for a moment, then headed back toward the subway with the cold creeping under my collar. The city's lights were fully on now, a glittering mask over a hard face. I thought about Lydia's phrase, someone's way of asking to speak without leaving proof. That felt like the spine of it, silence as an instrument. Routine as the delivery system back at the brownstone. Fritz took my coat and gave me the look that says you have been outdoors too long, and your judgment is questionable. I went to Wolfe's office and found him at his desk with a book open, and his beer half finished. as if he had spent the whole evening in exactly the posture he preferred. He looked up. "Well, I found your routine," I said. "A woman named Lydia Grant. She walks the bridge daily. Same pace, same lamppost, same few seconds looking down river." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "Routine is a hook, continue." I told him about the vendor, about Lydia's name and occupation, about her reaction when I mentioned the blank postcard and the date. Wolfe listened without interruption, except for a small grunt when I repeated her line about speaking, without leaving proof. When I told him she had received a blank postcard last year, with a different date, Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "She says she ignored it. 2 weeks later, a man approached her outside her office and asked about a manuscript. She would not tell me which. She says the method is familiar." Wolfe's fingers tapped once on the desk blotter, a small sound. "The sender uses public images and silent dates. He avoids handwriting. He avoids explicit language. He prefers deniability that indicates either fear or guilt." "Or both," I said. "Possibly," Wolfe replied. "Now, Lydia Grant is the routine. If the invitation is meant for her, she is the target. If the invitation is not meant for her, she is still a landmark. A man who chooses a bridge and a lamppost chooses them because someone predictable will be there. Predictability is exploited." I leaned back. "So we watch her." "We watch the bridge," Wolfe corrected. "We watch the lamppost, and we watch who watches her. She warned me not to stand like I own it," I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Miss Grant is intelligent. That is unsurprising for an editor. You will heed her warning, not because she gave it, but because it is sound." I nodded. "Third night tomorrow." "Yes," Wolfe said. "You will return. If the sender is coordinating this invitation, he will appear again. If he is not, then someone else will. 5 postcards were purchased. We have seen only one recipient, perhaps, and one rehearsal man. There is more." "And Lydia," I said. "She says the blank postcard is a way of asking to speak without leaving proof." Wolfe's eyes held mine. "It is also a way of forcing compliance. Silence makes the recipient supply, meaning that is pressure. The sender likes pressure." "Like leverage," I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Yes, Archie, like leverage. But we will not use that word until we know what is being leveraged." He looked at the postcard again, then at me. "Routines," Wolfe said, "are where secret messages land. They are also where secrets die, because routine invites observation. We will observe. On the 14th of February, someone intends something. Before that, someone will practice. You have already found one routine walker. Now find the man who cannot resist rehearsing his control." I stood and reached for my coat again, because that is what I do when Wolfe speaks like that. He stays, I move. The city provides the cold. As I left his office, I could smell the orchids upstairs and hear the faint clink of Fritz's dishes. The brownstone remained its calm self, the sort of place where even a blank postcard seems like an intruder. Out on the street, New York was loud and bright and indifferent, and somewhere between West 35th and the Brooklyn Bridge, someone was counting on routine to make a silent invitation land. Wolfe was counting on it to make the sender visible. Chapter 4. Why a blank card exists if there is one thing Nero Wolfe dislikes more than an unsolved problem. It is a solved problem that insists on lingering in his office like a guest who does not understand coats. The blank postcard had no manners at all. It arrived. It said nothing. And it sat on Wolfe's desk as if the desk were a public bulletin board. Wolfe did not mind the silence, because Wolfe never minds silence. He minds intention he cannot yet name. After my second report from the bridge, he took the postcard between 2 fingers and regarded it as if it were a poorly bred insect. Then he said, "We will not haunt the Brooklyn Bridge for sport. We will bring the bridge here." That is how Wolfe works. When the world is inconvenient, he rearranges it. He had me telephone Lydia Grant. I did not use the phrase urgent because it makes sensible people cautious and foolish people excited. I used the phrase clarify because editors respond to it The way hounds respond to a whistle. Miss Grant, I said. This is Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe. A pause. Then the same steady voice I had heard on the Brooklyn sidewalk. Yes. We received a postcard, I said. It may have been misdelivered. Mr. Wolfe would like you to look at it and tell us if it means anything to you. Another pause. If it means something, it was not meant to arrive at Mr. Wolfe's house. That is exactly why he wants you to look, I said. We prefer to avoid misunderstandings, especially the kind that bring people to bridges at dusk. That got her attention in a quiet way. She did not gasp. She did not protest. She asked one question. When? Today. I said 4 o'clock. She hesitated a moment, then said, All right, but I am not staying long. Mr. Wolfe does not encourage long stays, I told her. It interferes with dinner. At 4, Fritz answered the bell and brought Lydia Grant into the front room. She had removed her scarf, and I could see her face clearly for the first time. Early 30s, pale from winter and indoor work, eyes sharp and steady, hair pinned back with the neat severity of a person who does not trust wind. She wore a grey coat and carried a tote bag that looked heavy with paper. She glanced around the brownstone with the cautious interest of someone stepping into a private museum. It is warmer than the bridge, she said. That is the brownstone's greatest virtue, I replied, second only to its cook. Fritz's mouth tightened in mild satisfaction, which is his version of applause. Wolfe emerged from his office doorway, as if summoned by the word cook. He was in a good suit, vest buttoned, cuffs precise. His face was composed, but his eyes had that mild interest he wears when he believes an hour will be useful. Miss Grant, Wolfe said, welcome to my house. Thank you, she replied, and her tone made it clear she had not come for hospitality. Wolfe gestured toward his office. Please. She entered and paused, taking in the room's order, the red leather chairs, the desk, the books, the faint suggestion of orchids drifting down from upstairs. People with sensitive jobs always notice order. Disorder makes them feel exposed. Wolfe indicated the chair facing his desk. Lydia sat with her back straight, tote bag in her lap. I sat on the side chair, notebook, ready. Wolfe dislikes my notebook because it implies permanence, but he tolerates it because it prevents me from inventing later. Wolfe picked up the blank postcard and offered it to Lydia without comment. She took it, looked at the date, turned it over, and examined the picture side for a longer moment than I expected. Her eyes moved along the bridge, the lamp posts, the skyline, the water. She did not glance at the stamp first, the way Wolfe had. She glanced at the image, the way a person glances at a map. This is not random, she said. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted slightly. Number. It is the route, she said. It is my route. Your route to where? Wolfe asked. My office, Lydia replied. I cross the bridge when I walk. I work near City Hall. I felt my shoulders loosen a fraction. A bridge picture that matched her routine was not coincidence. It was a finger pointing, Wolfe said. Explain. Lydia held the postcard a moment longer, then set it on the desk carefully, as if it might stain the blotter. Someone chose this image because it looks ordinary, she said. A bridge postcard is nothing. Tourists buy them, but to someone who walks the bridge, it is not nothing. It is a signal. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied, and the date. She looked at the date again, the 14th of February. You have received such a card before, Wolfe said, her eyes sharpened. Mr. Goodwin told you? Yes, Wolfe said. We prefer facts to drama. Continue. Lydia exhaled slowly. Last year it was a different image, a different date. The meaning was the same, meet me without saying meet me. And did you? Wolfe asked. I did not, she said. I refused to be directed by a blank card. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Yet you were approached later. Yes, she said. Outside my office, a man who spoke as if we were acquaintances. He wanted a conversation without witnesses. And you refused? Wolfe said. I did, Lydia replied. I told him to send an email like a normal person. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And he did not. No, she said. He disappeared until now, perhaps, I said. This one came to our address, not yours. Lydia's gaze shifted to me. That is why I came. If my mail is being watched, a misdelivery is possible. Or it was not misdelivered at all. It may be meant to force you into the open. Wolfe's eyes held hers. I do not go into the open. I noticed, she said. There was a flicker of something like approval in Wolfe's eyes, which was rare enough to be noteworthy. Miss Grant, Wolfe said. You are an editor. That explains your attention to language. But why would anyone choose you as a recipient of silent appointments? Lydia hesitated. That hesitation was not fear. It was calculation, the editor deciding what can be said without creating a new problem. I work with a small civic group, she said at last. We review proposals for neighborhood grants, not the huge contracts that make headlines smaller projects. Repairs, renovations, community improvements. Wolfe leaned back slightly. Yet your group receives sensitive documents. Yes, Lydia said. Budgets, bids, competing plans, names of donors who want to remain quiet. Sometimes there are reasons, sometimes there are simply preferences. My ears pricked at that. I had heard the word bids too many times in too many cases for it to feel innocent. Wolfe said, a renovation contract. Lydia nodded. Recently there has been pressure to approve one quickly. Pressure, Wolfe repeated. It is not violent, she said. It is polite emails, reminders, helpful calls, people offering to simplify the process, to move it along, to ensure we do not delay progress. It is all dressed as concern. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Polite pressure is often the most effective. It leaves the victim ashamed of resisting. Lydia's eyes held his. Exactly. I said, who is applying pressure? Lydia looked at me as if assessing whether I was safe to answer. I do not know the origin, she said. The emails come from different addresses, but the tone is similar. The calls come from people who claim to represent one bidder or another, or the broader community. They all want the same thing: speed, approval. No questions, Wolfe said. What is the project? A renovation of a neighborhood library branch, Lydia said. It is not glamorous, but it matters. The building is old. The committee wants improvements. Several vendors submitted bids. There it was, neatly placed in the middle of the room like a chess piece. A library renovation, competing bids, pressure for speed. It matched the shape Wolfe had suspected without naming it yet. Wolfe's voice remained calm. Do you hold the bids? I see them, Lydia said. I am not the chair. I am an editor, a volunteer reviewer. I work on summaries and clarity. But yes, I have handled copies. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Then your mail may be watched because your mail carries paper that creates leverage. Lydia's gaze hardened. That is what I suspect, I asked. Why not report it? To whom? Lydia replied. The group is civic and small. We have no security. We are volunteers. If I accuse someone without proof, it becomes politics. The people applying pressure rely on that. They rely on my reluctance to make noise. Wolfe nodded. They rely on decency. Or fatigue, Lydia said. Wolfe's mouth tightened in agreement. He reached for the blank postcard again, held it up, and said, This is a method designed for people like you, people who handle documents, who value discretion, and who dislike spectacle. The sender expects you to meet quietly because meeting quietly feels safer than resisting. Lydia's eyes flicked toward the office door, then back. I do not meet quietly with strangers. And yet you are here, I said. She looked at me sharply, then softened a fraction. I am here because Mr. Wolfe's address is not mine. If someone is willing to involve him, it suggests an escalation or desperation. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Or a miscalculation. Lydia glanced upward, as if she could sense the orchids without seeing them. You live like a fortress. Wolfe's voice was dry. A fortress with good food. Fritz chose that moment to appear with a tray of coffee and small biscuits. Lydia blinked, surprised by the comfort, then accepted a cup as if it were another form of interrogation. Wolfe waited until she had taken a sip, then asked, "Have you ever felt followed on your walks?" Lydia hesitated. Wolfe did not push. He simply waited, which is his favorite tool. Waiting makes people supply what they have been holding back. Finally, Lydia said, "Yes." "Describe," Wolfe said. "Twice," she replied. "Not every day, not close enough to be obvious, but close enough that I noticed. The same man, I think. Someone who moved, like he belonged near my building, not near my office." "Why do you think the same man?" Wolfe asked. "Because of the hands," Lydia said. "Surprising me. Careful hands, the way he held his phone. Not fidgety, deliberate, like a clerk who handles paper all day and does not want to smudge it." Wolfe's eyes brightened a fraction. That was his kind of description. Not tall or short, not handsome or ugly, but a behavioral detail that cannot be changed without effort. I asked because Wolfe had trained me well. What did he look like otherwise? Lydia focused, tall, grey coat, plain hat, always busy with his phone. As if work follows him, he would stop when I stopped. But not obviously. He would look away when I glanced back. He behaved as if being seen would ruin his purpose. Wolfe smiled slightly, not warmly but with a small satisfaction that said the case had just offered him a solid piece. "Careful hands," Wolfe murmured. "Yes, those often belong to clerks, managers, and people who handle other people's papers." Lydia's eyes flicked to him. "You think he handles our documents?" "I think he handles someone's documents," Wolfe replied, "and he is used to treating paper as power." I said, "Did he speak to you?" "No," Lydia said. "Never. That is what made it worse. If he spoke, I could dismiss him. If he remained silent, I had to wonder." Wolfe nodded. "Silence is language, as I observed. It creates meaning by absence." Lydia looked at the postcard again. "That is what this is, a silent push." Wolfe's voice remained calm. "Yes. Now we will give it a reply." Lydia stiffened. "I am not going to the bridge on the 14th of February to meet someone." Wolfe held up a hand. "I did not suggest that you should. I will not sacrifice you for curiosity." Her shoulders eased slightly. "Then what?" Wolfe looked at me. "Archie will go." I blinked. "Of course I will." Wolfe continued, addressing Lydia, "You will continue your routine. That is important. Do not alter your walk. Do not change your time. If you change it, you inform the watcher that he has been noticed. People who plan quietly are embarrassed by being noticed. Embarrassment makes them reckless, but it also makes them evasive. We want them predictable." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "You want me to be bait?" "I want you to be yourself," Wolfe said. "That is sufficient." She considered that, if I keep walking, and he keeps following. "Then Archie will observe," Wolfe said, "and perhaps he will introduce himself to your follower in a manner less delicate than mine." I said, "I can be delicate. I once carried a souffle across this room without dropping it." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "That was because Fritz threatened you." "Motivation is motivation," I replied. Lydia's mouth twitched, almost a smile, then vanished. Wolfe said, "Now tell me about the committee." Lydia straightened again, her editor mind shifting to structure. "There are 7 members. The chair is Martin Pell. He is careful, but he dislikes confrontation. There is a treasurer, Edna Rusk, who likes drama. There is a board representative, Bradford Vale, who speaks smoothly and always urges speed." That name landed softly but firmly. Bradford Vale, smooth, urges speed, wants quick approval. I had not heard it in this case yet, but it fit the shape like a well-cut coat fits a man who intends to impress. Wolfe's eyes did not change, but I knew him well enough to see the small internal click. "Bradford Vale," Wolfe repeated. "Yes," Lydia said. "He is charming. He is also persistent. He insists delays will harm the neighborhood. He speaks as if he owns urgency." Wolfe nodded. People who own urgency often own other things as well. Lydia continued. We have vendors competing. One is a large contractor with a glossy proposal. Another is a smaller local firm. There are also subcontractors, security, wiring, the usual. The documents circulate. Copies go out, summaries come in. It is not glamorous, but it is enough to tempt anyone who prefers influence to patience. Wolfe asked, have any documents gone missing? Lydia hesitated. Not missing in an obvious way. But last week one packet arrived opened. The seal was broken, the pages were intact, but the envelope was not sealed anymore. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. That indicates tampering without theft. Yes, Lydia said. Someone wanted to know contents, not to keep the paper, or wanted to leave no gap in our record. Wolfe nodded once. Information without disruption. Again, polite corruption. Lydia's voice tightened. I have considered resigning. Wolfe's gaze held hers. Do not. Resignation rewards the wrong person. It leaves the field to those who apply pressure. She inhaled, then nodded slightly, as if ashamed that she had considered it. Wolfe looked at the postcard again, then said, Miss Grant, you have done well by coming here. Now I will ask one more thing. When you received the blank postcard last year, you said you destroyed it. How? She blinked at the question, then answered with editor precision. I tore it into small pieces and threw it away in a public bin. Not in your office, Wolfe said. No, Lydia replied. I did not want it in my office trash. Wolfe nodded. A sensible precaution. It also implies you feared the wrong eyes. Lydia's eyes sharpened. Yes. Wolfe leaned back. Then you understand our position. A blank postcard is meant to avoid proof. Therefore, we must create proof by other means, observation, timing, and the behavior of careful hands. I said, 3 nights on the bridge gave us 1 rehearsal man and 1 routine walker. Now we have the routine's identity and a description of the watcher, Wolfe nodded, and a likely sphere of motive, a library renovation, grant proposals, bids, and pressure for speed. That is where paper becomes power. Lydia's gaze moved between us. So you think the postcard is tied to the committee? I think it is tied to documents, Wolfe replied. And documents are the committee's lifeblood. If someone wants to steer the renovation improperly, he must steer the paper. Lydia's voice was low. Then the blank card is a request to speak about paper, or a warning, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed at me. Do not improvise threats. I am not improvising, I said. I am remembering the way people behave when they are nervous. They invite you to a bridge at dusk because bridges feel dramatic even when the invitation is blank. Lydia looked at me, then said, It is also a place where you can be pushed. That sentence sat in the room with a weight it did not have on the bridge. Indoors, in Wolfe's ordered office, the idea of a push felt very specific. Wolfe's face remained calm. Yes. A bridge offers water and a quick end. That is why it is chosen when intimidation is desired without explicit language. Lydia's fingers tightened on her coffee cup. So the postcard could be an intimidation. It could, Wolfe said, or it could be a summons for a private exchange. Either way, it is coercion. Lydia set the cup down carefully. Then, what do you want me to do? Wolfe's voice was firm. Continue your routine. Note the follower, if you see him again, but do not confront him. Do not change your path. Do not discuss this with the committee yet. Not until we know who is applying pressure and how. Mr. Goodwin will do the confronting. I am flattered, I said. Wolfe ignored me and added, Also, you will provide Mr. Goodwin with the names of the committee members and the vendors, and any recent correspondence that seems too interested. Emails, reminders, calls, anything. We will map the pressure. Lydia nodded. I can do that. Wolfe rose slightly, which meant the interview was ending. Wolfe ends interviews the way he ends meals, when he has had enough. Miss Grant, he said, you have identified why a blank card exists. It exists because someone wants access to you without leaving proof. It exists because someone believes routine will deliver compliance. It exists because someone believes silence makes him safe. He is mistaken. Lydia looked at him steadily. I hope you are right. I am, Wolfe said, and the certainty in his voice made the room feel smaller and safer at once. As Lydia stood, she glanced toward the hall, then back at Wolfe. One more thing. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted. Yes. If you send your assistant to the bridge on the 14th of February, she said, tell him not to dress like he belongs there. I sighed. That hurts. It is advice, she said, and there was a hint of dry humor in her eyes now. Your face looks like questions. I have been told that, I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly, almost amused. Archie will manage. He is accustomed to being looked at. Lydia nodded once, then let Fritz escort her out with the same dignity he had used to escort her in when the front door closed. The brownstone settled back into its quiet. Wolfe remained standing for a moment, looking at the postcard on his desk. Archie, he said. Yes, careful hands, Wolfe murmured. Clerks, managers, I said. People who handle other people's papers. Someone with access to addresses, schedules, and documents. And someone who thinks a blank postcard is clever, I said. Wolfe sat, reached for his beer, and said, Cleverness is common, intelligence is rare. We will see which this is. I looked at the postcard again. The 14th of February sat there quietly, like a date on a tombstone. So, I said, I keep watching the bridge, and now I watch Lydia's follower too. Yes, Wolfe said. You will watch for the tall man in the grey coat, the careful hands, the phone used as a mask. If he appears again, you will follow him, not to confront him on the bridge, but to learn where careful hands go when they are not pretending to be casual. And if he spots me, I asked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Then you have failed. That is encouraging, I said. Wolfe's gaze shifted upward toward the plant rooms. Also, Archie, do not neglect dinner. Fritz has prepared lamb. That, from Wolfe, was both instruction and reassurance. The world might contain blank postcards and polite pressure, but it also contained Fritz's lamb and Wolfe's certainty that logic would win. I stood and pocketed the postcard, because I had a feeling it would be needed again. Not as a clue this time, but as bait outside. New York was turning on its lights again, slow and stubborn, and somewhere in that city, a man with careful hands was handling someone else's paper and counting on silence to protect him. He had chosen the wrong address. Chapter 5. Interception and the Fear of Paper, when Nero Wolfe tells you to investigate something. He does it in the tone of a man requesting you to fetch a book from the shelf. The tone suggests the task will be quick, tidy, and completed before lunch. The task itself usually involves climbing stairs in a drafty building and talking to people who have developed personal theories about locks. This one began with Wolfe sitting behind his desk, looking at the blank postcard, as if it were an uninvited guest who had taken a chair and refused to introduce himself. Archie, he said. You will determine whether Miss Grant's mail can be intercepted in her building. I had been expecting something like that. Lydia Grant had walked her bridge like a metronome, and someone had used that metronome to tap out a silent invitation. If the postcard had been meant for her, it might have been diverted, copied, or merely observed. If it had been meant for us, then someone had to know enough to pick our address and assume I would handle Wolfe's mail. Either way, it was the sort of operation that loves hallways, lobbies, and men with keys. I said, You want me to inspect mailboxes. I want you to observe access. Wolfe corrected. Mail does not intercept itself. That is a pity, I said. It would save me travel time. Wolfe ignored that. He had the calm eyes on, the ones that mean his mind is already arranging the next 3 steps. The blank postcard exists, he said, because someone believes regular paper is not safe. That belief must have a cause. Find it. Paper not safe, I repeated. In New York. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Do not be clever. Be thorough. I got my coat. 2 hours later, I was in Brooklyn, outside Lydia Grant's building, looking up at a respectable block of brick that wore its respectability like a clean collar. It was not a brownstone. It was a mid-sized apartment building with a lobby door, a buzzer panel, and the faint smell of heating oil mixed with somebody's cooking. There was a notice taped to the glass about package theft, which is the city's way of saying welcome. Lydia had given me permission to speak to her superintendent. She had not sounded delighted about it, but she had sounded resigned, which is not the same thing as cooperative, but can be used similarly. The lobby was narrow and clean. The mailboxes lined one wall, the kind with small doors and little slots that make a man think of secrets. A bulletin board hung nearby with notices about lost cats, a community meeting, and a stern reminder not to leave trash in the stairwell. The building believed in order. A man emerged from a side door that said, "Management." He was in his 40s, rosy-faced, and dressed in a sweater that looked new enough to be intentional. He carried a ring of keys and wore a smile that arrived too quickly. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I hope so," I said. "Archie Goodwin, I'm here to see Gavin Marsh, Lydia's superintendent." His smile widened, as if he had been complimented. "That's me, superintendent, building manager, whatever you want to call it." "Mr. Marsh," I said, "I'm working for Nero Wolfe." That name landed. People who have never met Wolfe still react to it, because New York collects names the way it collects grime. Marsh blinked once, then recovered his smile. "Nero Wolfe, the detective. That's something. You folks got trouble in my building." "I have not decided yet," I said. "I'm here about a tenant, Lydia Grant." "Oh, Lydia," Marsh said. "Nice lady, quiet, pays on time, keeps to herself." Editors always keep to themselves, you know. They look at you like they're correcting your grammar. "That is because they are," I told him. He laughed too loudly, then waved me toward the management office. "Come on in. We run a tight ship here. Tenant safety is big with me. Packages, mail, deliveries, all that. People these days, they steal anything. I don't let it happen." "That is reassuring," I said. Inside, the office was exactly what I expect from men who talk about tight ships. It was neat. Too neat. Papers were stacked squarely. A calendar hung on the wall with dates marked in thick pen. A small desk lamp sat precisely aligned. There was even a potted plant that looked like it had been trained to stand at attention. Marsh motioned me to a chair. He did not sit immediately. He closed the office door, and that gesture was friendly on the surface but private underneath. Men who like to control paper also like to control rooms. "So," he said, sitting at last, "what's going on with Lydia? She okay?" "I am not her doctor," I said. "I'm here about mail." His eyebrows lifted. "Mail, specifically postcards," I said. He nodded quickly. Too quickly. "We don't tamper with mail." I stared at him for a beat. He kept smiling. I said, "I haven't accused you of tampering." His smile held, but it had stiffened around the edges. "Well, people come in here accusing. You wouldn't believe, I tell them. The mailman comes, he opens the panel, he drops it in. That's it. We keep things orderly." "You have used the word orderly 3 times, I said. "It is starting to sound personal." He laughed again, the same loud laugh. "It is personal, order is safety. You get disorder, you get theft, you get people propping doors open, you get strangers in hallways. I don't allow it." I let him talk. "Wolfe has taught me that the mouth is a reliable leak." While Marsh talked about tenant safety, I looked around. Behind him, on a side table, was a stack of circulars. Not one stack, several stacks. Each was neatly sorted, held together with rubber bands, and each had a small slip of paper on top, with an apartment number written in block letters. Undelivered circulars. That is not illegal. It is also not normal. Most supers throw circulars in a bin and forget them. Sorting them by apartment number takes time, and time spent on junk paper is time spent on control. On his desk, near the pen cup, was a small date stamp pad, one of those ink pads that goes with a rubber stamp, the kind used for logging deliveries, or for marking documents, or for making a piece of paper look as if it arrived earlier than it did. I nodded toward it. "You run a mail log." "Packages," he said quickly. Not letters. We log packages sometimes when tenants ask. They worry. They're always worried. Yet you have circulars sorted by apartment number, I said. He glanced at them, then shrugged. People miss stuff. They say they never got the grocery flyer, like it matters. I keep them so if somebody complains I can say, here you go. I'm helpful, he said. Helpful with pride, like a man presenting a diploma. And the date stamp, I said. He smiled. That's for packages too. Date received. Keeps records clean. Records clean, I repeated. He leaned forward. Look, I don't know what you think you're gonna find here, but I run a good building. I'm on top of things. On top of paper, I said. He laughed again, and this time it was thinner. Paper is part of the job. Tell me about the mailboxes, I said. He gestured with his keys. Standard, locked panel. Only me and the mail carrier got access to the main panel. You keep the panel key, I asked. Sure, he said. We have to. If the mailman loses his, we can let him in. If the panel sticks, we fix it. That's management. You ever open it without the mailman? I asked. His smile tightened. No reason to. No reason at all, I said. Not even to fish out a misdelivered letter. If a letter gets misdelivered, the tenant puts it back in the slot, he said. Or they bring it to me. People bring everything to me. They think I'm their father. You sound flattered, I said. I'm responsible, he corrected. This building runs because I keep things orderly. There was that word again. He loved it, or he feared its absence. Either way, it was not a casual preference. I decided to test him gently, not by accusing, but by offering him an easy story he could accept if he wanted to cooperate. Lydia thinks someone may be watching her mail, I said. Not stealing it, watching it. His smile returned, too fast. Nobody watches mail. I looked at him. You mean nobody should? I mean nobody does, he said. And his voice had that firmness people use when they need something to be true, I asked. Has anyone asked you about Lydia's mail? He blinked. Asked. Agnon, I repeated. A tenant, a visitor, a committee member, someone curious. Number Lydia's quiet. Nobody bothers her. Does she receive committee documents? I asked. His eyebrows rose. Committee, civic group, I said. Neighborhood grants, he shrugged. People get mail. People get documents. I don't read it. I don't care. That last phrase was too broad. When a man insists he does not care, he usually does. I stood. All right, Mr. Marsh. Thank you for your time. He stood too quickly, as if afraid sitting still would look suspicious. You want to see the mail room? He asked. We're in it, I said, nodding toward the mailboxes in the lobby beyond the office door. He laughed again, and it was even thinner. I mean the back, the storage, the package area. No, I said. Not today. He escorted me out with an eagerness that tried to look like courtesy. At the lobby he paused beside the mailboxes. See, he said, secure locked. No funny business. Funny business is rarely funny, I told him. He smiled and did not like my joke, which was his right. Outside, I took a slow walk down the block to make sure he did not watch me leave. He did not step out. That meant he either was unconcerned or preferred to watch from inside. Men who like order often prefer indoor observation. I took the subway back to Manhattan and reported to Wolfe as soon as I entered the brownstone. Wolfe was in his office, of course. Fritz had set a tray with beer and a plate of something small and excellent, because Fritz believes even investigations should have nourishment. Wolfe looked up. Well, Gavin Marsh, I said, superintendent, warm, helpful. Uses the word orderly like it's a prayer. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Helpful is often camouflage, continue. I told him everything, including the circulars sorted by apartment number, the date stamp pad, and Marsh's first reaction to the word postcards. When I quoted Marsh's quick denial, Wolfe's eyebrows lifted slightly. He said, We don't tamper with mail. before you accused him, Wolfe said. Exactly, I replied. I hadn't accused him of anything. I was still warming up. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied. Honest people deny accusations after they are made, not before. Premature denial reveals anticipation. I thought you would like that, I said. I do, Wolfe replied. What of the circulars? Neatly sorted, I said. By apartment number, like he enjoys knowing who gets what, or like he enjoys being able to produce paper on demand. That is a form of power. And the date stamp pad, I added. On his desk, used for logging deliveries, he claims. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Or for altering the apparent arrival of documents. A stamp is a convenient lie. I leaned back. So you think Marsh is intercepting Lydia's mail? I think, Wolfe said, that he is capable, and perhaps willing. Capability precedes crime. We must now determine whether he is acting alone or at another's direction. How? I asked. Wolfe's gaze went to the postcard. By observing him when he believes he is unobserved. You want me in Lydia's hallway, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. I am becoming a fixture in Brooklyn, I said. Soon they will name a subway stop after me. Wolfe ignored that. Tonight, you will return to Miss Grant's building and watch her mail slot. I blinked. Her mail slot. In the hallway, Wolfe said. If Mr. Marsh is tampering, he will linger. People who tamper with mail cannot resist checking whether their tampering has been noticed. They require reassurance. That made a certain grim sense. A man who sorts circulars by apartment number is not doing it for exercise. He is doing it because paper makes him feel in control. I went back that evening because Wolfe does not like delays, and because February nights are best spent anywhere that is not outdoors, and a hallway counts. Lydia met me in her doorway, coat on, scarf ready, eyes sharp. Did you learn anything? She asked. I learned your superintendent loves paper, I said, and he denies tampering before anyone accuses him. Her eyes narrowed. That does not prove anything. No, I agreed. It proves he thinks about it. She hesitated, then nodded toward the stairwell. You can wait there. There is a small landing with a radiator. Try not to look like a burglar. That is my natural look, I told her. I will soften it. She almost smiled, then went back inside and closed her door. I stationed myself on the stairwell landing one flight above her floor, where I could see the hallway and the row of doors without being obvious. The radiator clanked and provided just enough warmth to keep my fingers working. New York hallways have their own smell. Old paint, dust, and the faint perfume of tenants who believe scent is privacy. At 7:40 the building quieted. At 8:10 I heard the elevator. The doors opened on Lydia's floor, and Gavin Marsh stepped out. He carried a small clipboard and a handful of envelopes. He walked down the hall slowly, stopping at each mailbox slot built into the wall near the apartment doors. He slipped an envelope into one slot, another into another. He was distributing something, perhaps circulars, perhaps notices, perhaps nothing important. Then he reached Lydia's door. He paused. Not a long pause. Not dramatic, but longer than the pause he gave to any other door. He leaned slightly toward her slot and looked at it, as if checking whether something had already arrived. His hand hovered near the slot for a second, then withdrew. He moved on. I waited, because Wolfe had told me to observe, not to pounce. Pouncing makes a man defensive. Observing makes him sloppy. 10 minutes later, Marsh returned on foot from the stairwell side, not the elevator. He walked down the hallway again, slower now, and paused again by Lydia's door. This time he looked around first, a quick glance that tried to be casual and failed. Then he leaned toward the mail slot once more. He did not touch it. He simply inspected it, as if a man watching a stove to see when it will boil. Then he straightened and walked away. That was lingering, and it was unnecessary, and it was exactly what Wolfe predicted, which meant Wolfe had something to work with. I did not confront Marsh. I let him go. A superintendent with keys and a sense of order is a man who can vanish behind management doors the moment you challenge him. Better to bring him into Wolfe's office later, where keys do not help. I returned to the brownstone and reported, late enough that Fritz gave me a look that suggested dinner has rights. Wolfe listened, fingers steepled, eyes calm. He lingered. Wolfe said, "Twice," I confirmed. "Longer at her door than any other. Checked the slot, like it was a thermometer." Wolfe nodded once. "Then the mechanism is near. We must now determine what he is watching for. A postcard, perhaps, or committee documents, or any paper that allows pressure." "And the blank postcard," I said. "It exists because someone thinks regular paper isn't safe." Wolfe's mouth tightened, pleased in his restrained way. "Yes, someone believes paper is vulnerable to eyes, hands, and stamps. Therefore he chooses silence and public images. He chooses a date, not a message. He chooses a bridge, not a letter. He chooses what cannot be proven easily." I sat back and let the warmth of the brownstone do its work. "So," I said, "what do we do next?" "Follow Marsh, squeeze him. Get him to admit he's been opening mail." Wolfe's gaze went upward, toward the plant rooms, as if orchids might offer a hint. Then he looked back at me. "We do not squeeze," Wolfe said. "We invite. Mr. Marsh believes order is his ally. We will show him order is our ally instead." "That sounds like one of your speeches," I said. "It is," Wolfe replied. "And it will be effective because it is true." He picked up the blank postcard again, held it for a moment, and set it down. "Archie," Wolfe said, "the blank postcard is not only an invitation, it is evidence of fear. A man who fears paper fears records, and records lead to accountability. That is the heart of this. Someone wants the library renovation approved quickly, before questions solidify into documents that can be examined." "Polite pressure," I said. "Yes," Wolfe replied, "and careful hands. We have a superintendent who loves stamps and sorted circulars. We have a committee with sensitive documents. We have a bridge chosen because it looks ordinary at a glance. Now we will make it look ordinary up close as well, by placing our own eyes where the sender did not expect them." He paused, then added, "Tomorrow you will speak to Martin Pell, the committee chair," I said. Wolfe nodded. "Yes, and you will ask for the timeline and the pressure points. If someone is rushing, there is a reason. Reasons are always attached to people." I stood, because that is what happens when Wolfe starts assigning. He sits. I move. As I went toward the door, Wolfe's voice followed me, calm and certain. "Remember, Archie, the blank postcard exists because someone believes regular paper is not safe. We will show him that paper is safest when it is in the hands of those who read it correctly." I opened the door, felt February's cold in the crack, and thought about Gavin Marsh's lingering in that hallway, his careful sorting of junk circulars, his stamp pad like a small instrument of control. Paper is supposed to be harmless. It lies flat. It makes no noise. But in New York, paper is never harmless. It is either a promise, a threat, or a lever. And somewhere in Brooklyn, a man with keys and a taste for order believed he could touch other people's paper without being seen. Wolfe had noticed him. That was enough to make any piece of paper dangerous. Chapter 6. The sender who couldn't speak normally. Wolfe's mind does not jump, it climbs. Watching him think is like watching a man go up a staircase he designed himself. He takes each step because it is there, and because stepping over one would insult the staircase. That afternoon, after my report about Gavin Marsh lingering in Lydia Grant's hall, Wolfe sat behind his desk with the blank postcard in front of him and said, "There are two possibilities, Archie." I was seated in the red leather chair that Wolfe permits me, which is generous of him, since he believes chairs encourage idleness unless he is in them. "Only two," I said. "That is efficient." "Do not be childish," Wolfe replied. "Either the sender is hiding from an interceptor, or he is hiding from Miss Grant herself." I frowned. "Hiding from the superintendent, or hiding from Lydia?" "Precisely," Wolfe said. "If the sender fears mail interception, he avoids writing anything that can be used against him. If he fears Miss Grant, he avoids direct contact, Fear dictates method. Or guilt, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Fear and guilt are often companions. We will determine which is leading. He lifted the postcard by its corner and turned it once, as if the motion might reveal a secret. It did not. But Wolfe looked satisfied anyway. You will return to the bridge at dusk, Wolfe said. You will wait near the lamppost Miss Grant always passes. You will watch for the man in the grey coat. If he appears, you will follow him. If he does not, you will watch who watches Miss Grant. That sounds like surveillance, I said. It is observation, Wolfe corrected. Surveillance is what the police do without paying attention. That was Wolfe's idea of humor, which is like his idea of dancing. It exists in theory. I went the Brooklyn Bridge at dusk again. Same wind, same boards. Same crowd that makes you feel you are in the world's most stubborn parade. The city turned on its lights like a slow performance, the skyline growing brighter while the river stayed dark, refusing to participate. I arrived early and took a position near the lamppost that had become our marker. I did not lean on it like I owned it. I stood slightly aside, as if I were waiting for someone who had told me wrongly that this was a quiet place. Lydia Grant arrived at her usual time, steady pace, no distraction. She paused at the lamppost, looked downriver for her exact few seconds, then continued without looking at anyone. Routine, pure and disciplined. I watched the crowd beyond her. I watched the edges, the places where someone who wanted to watch would place himself. I watched hands. Wolfe was right about hands. They tell you more than faces do, because people practice faces. Few people practice hands. 10 minutes before Lydia arrived, a man in a grey coat appeared. He was tall, his coat was plain, his hat was plain. His hands were careful. He held his phone not like a toy but like a mask, bringing it up, glancing down, lowering it again, as if the phone were a prop in a small private play called I Am Busy. He did not go straight to the lamppost. He drifted near a notice board mounted on the railing, one of those tourist information panels that shows you what you are looking at so you do not have to think. He pretended to read it. He shifted his weight. He checked the time on his phone too often. The checking was his weakness. A man who checks time repeatedly is either nervous or rehearsing. I recognized him from Lydia's description. So cleanly, it felt like meeting a sketch in person. When Lydia passed, the man's head turned slightly. Not enough to look obvious, enough to confirm. Then, when Lydia continued, the man waited a moment and then followed. I followed him. New York makes following easy because no one expects privacy. You can trail a man through crowds, down stairs, around corners, and as long as you do not stare like a lovesick puppy, you are just another body in the city's stream. He went off the bridge toward the Manhattan side. He did not descend to the street at the first stairs. He continued, as if he wanted to be sure no one was specifically behind him. He stopped once to tie his shoe. The tying was too careful. It was a check. I paused too, pretending to admire the skyline, and watched his hands. He tied the lace firmly, not fiddling. Clerk hands, paper hands. He continued to the end of the walkway, descended, and walked 2 blocks to a narrow side street where the storefronts were small and practical. There was a print shop there, the kind that does business quietly. You can tell because the window does not shout, it displays samples, it assumes you know what you need. The man entered. I waited outside for a few seconds, then followed him in. The shop smelled of ink, paper, and warm machinery. A clerk behind the counter looked up, eyes flicking from the grey coat to my hat to the casual way I stood. Printers have good eyes. They live by detail. The man in the grey coat leaned toward the clerk and spoke quietly. I could not hear the words, but I could see the gestures. He held up a small slip of paper, then pointed to a rack of labels. He pulled out his wallet. He paid. The clerk disappeared into the back. The man waited, phone in hand again, eyes scanning the shop's reflection in the window, not the street itself. He was trying to look casual in a place where casual looks suspicious. The clerk returned with a small envelope and handed it over. The grey coat man tucked it into his pocket with the care of someone placing a fragile thing into storage, typed address labels. He left the shop. I followed him out and let him take 3 steps before I spoke. "Mr. Greycoat," I said, "you have been practicing casual badly." He stopped so abruptly I nearly bumped him. He turned. His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed, fear and annoyance both, but the fear was stronger. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Archie Goodwin," I said. "Nero Wolfe's office." His face changed. It was subtle, but it was relief. Relief is an odd reaction in a man who has been caught following a woman on a bridge. "Wolfe," he said. "You work for Wolfe." "That's what I said," I replied. "Now tell me who you are before I decide you are a villain. I have limited patience and a decent imagination." He swallowed. "My name is Noah Keller." "Occupation," I said. He hesitated, then said, "Junior clerk, civic grant committee. I handle copies, schedules, minutes. I do the small work. Nobody notices." Wolfe would have liked that sentence. "Nobody notices is the whole theme," I said. "You have been following Lydia Grant." He shook his head too quickly. "Number, I have been trying to speak to her. On a bridge at dusk with a blank postcard," I said. "That is not speaking. That is the opposite." He flinched. "I could not do it normally." "You could not," I repeated. "Or you would not." He looked past me at the street, then back. His hands moved slightly. Nervous now. They were still careful, but fear makes even careful hands betray themselves. "I could not," he said. "Because someone is watching the mail." "You mean Gavin Marsh," I said. He blinked. "The superintendent?" "Yes," I said. "He likes order. Also rubber stamps." Noah Keller's eyes widened slightly. "Then you know." "I know he denies tampering before he is accused," I said. "That is a clue. Now, why are you sending Lydia blank postcards?" Noah swallowed. "To warn her." "Warn her about what?" I asked. He hesitated. I leaned in slightly. "Noah, if you keep hesitating, I will stop being polite." He exhaled. "Someone inside the committee has been copying documents." "That is vague," I said. "They copy bids," he said quickly, as if relieved to get it out. "They copy donor lists. They copy draft summaries. They copy everything that comes through, and they watch what goes out. Outgoing mail. They want to know who receives what. They want to control the flow." My stomach tightened slightly, because paper turning into leverage is one of Wolfe's favorite patterns. And it was shaping itself neatly, I said. "Who?" Noah shook his head. "I do not know for certain." "You work there," I said. "You see paper. You see hands." He swallowed. "There are people above me. They can sign things out. They can request copies. They can call vendors. They can pressure volunteers politely." "Bradford Vale," I said. Noah's eyes flicked. That flick was his answer, even if his mouth refused. "I did not say that," he whispered. "You did not have to," I said. "Now tell me why you could not simply email Lydia and say someone is copying documents." Noah's voice tightened. "Because email leaves proof, and proof is what they fear, but it is also what they can use against me. They would know it was me. They would remove me. They would smear me. They would say I mishandled confidential information. I have a job. I need that job." "You think a blank postcard is safer," I said. "It says nothing," he insisted. "If someone intercepts it, they cannot accuse me of anything. It is only a date." "And the bridge," I said. He looked miserable. "I chose the bridge because it is public. I thought she would come, I thought. I needed to speak without leaving proof." "You sent 5 cards," I said. He blinked. I bought 5. "Why?" I asked. He swallowed. "In case one was intercepted, in case one was lost, in case she did not respond. I planned to send another date if she ignored it." "You are persistent," I said. "I am scared," he replied. That was honest enough to be useful. I took a breath and adjusted my tone, because my tone was doing what winter does. making everything sharper than it needed to be. "All right, Noah," I said. "If you want to warn her, you do not do it on a bridge. You do it in Wolfe's office, where he can decide what to do with your fear." Noah's eyes widened. "He will see me." "Yes," I said. "That is the point. He will also protect you if you have something worth protecting." Noah hesitated. "I do not want trouble." "You already have it," I said. "You mailed it to Wolfe." He looked down, then nodded, defeated. "Come," I said. "We are going to the brownstone." "No," he said quickly. "Not now. They will notice if I vanish." "They will notice if you keep rehearsing on a bridge," I told him. "Pick your poison." He stared at me for a moment, then nodded again. He was not brave, but he was not stupid. I took him to a cab because the subway was too public, and Noah was already sweating in his coat. The cab ride to West 35th was quiet, except for traffic and Noah's occasional nervous glance at his pocket, where the typed labels sat like contraband. At the brownstone, Fritz opened the door, took one look at Noah Keller, and gave me the mild disapproval he reserves for stray animals I bring home. "Mr. Wolfe is in the office," Fritz said, as if this were news. "He always is," I said. Noah looked around the front room with wide eyes, as if he expected the brownstone to bite him. He smelled faintly of ink and worry. Wolfe was at his desk, beer nearby, posture solid. He looked up as we entered and regarded Noah Keller with the calm of a man meeting a new specimen. "Mr. Keller," Wolfe said, "you have finally provided a reason." Noah's mouth opened, then closed. He had expected anger or suspicion. Wolfe offered neither. Wolfe offered interest, which is worse if you are hiding something and better if you want to be believed. Wolfe gestured to the chair. "Sit down. You will tell me why you could not speak normally." Noah sat. Hands clasped, eyes flicking briefly toward me as if hoping I would translate the room for him. I did not. Wolfe prefers the truth spoken directly. Noah inhaled and began. And as he spoke, I watched Wolfe's face. Wolfe was still, but his eyes sharpened with each detail. The blank postcard had become a human voice, and Wolfe was collecting it the way he collects facts, one at a time, with no wasted motion. By the time Noah finished his first sentence about copied documents and watched mail, the case had stopped being a curiosity and become what Wolfe likes best. A reason, Chapter 7, the invitation's real purpose. When a man comes into Wolfe's office carrying fear, he tries to put it on the rug like an overcoat. Wolfe does not allow that. He makes the man wear it and describe the stitching. Noah Keller sat in the red leather chair facing Wolfe's desk, hands clasped too tightly, shoulders hunched as if he expected the ceiling to fall. He was young enough to have that particular kind of anxiety that comes from learning, for the first time, that institutions can lie politely. His clothes were decent but not expensive. His hands were careful, as Lydia had said. And now they were betraying him by rubbing the tips of his fingers together, the way a clerk rubs ink off, without realizing it. Wolfe regarded him with mild interest and no sympathy. Wolfe's sympathy is reserved for orchids and for Fritz, when Fritz is forced to deal with inferior ingredients. For human beings, Wolfe reserves reason. "Mr. Keller," Wolfe said, "we will proceed efficiently. You have used an absurd method to achieve a necessary end. Explain the necessity." Noah swallowed. "It was not absurd." "It was," Wolfe replied. "It was also clever in a narrow way now." "Why?" Noah drew a breath. He glanced at me once as if checking that I was still there, then looked at Wolfe again. "I discovered altered meeting notes," he said, "and missing draft objections in the committee files." Wolfe's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Altered? How?" Noah hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and produced a thin folder. He placed it on his lap, as if it were fragile. "I type the minutes," he said. "I keep copies. There are drafts. I saw changes after the fact. Small changes. Wording softened, objections removed. Questions turned into compliments. It was subtle enough that most people would not notice, but I noticed because I wrote the first version." Wolfe nodded once. A clerk's advantage, familiarity with paper. Noah's eyes tightened with something like gratitude that Wolfe had understood him without mockery. It got worse, Noah said. The vendor comparison sheet, the one that lists the bids side by side with notes, it vanished from the file room. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Vanished? Yes, Noah said. It was in the folder on Monday. On Tuesday it was gone. I searched, I asked. Everyone shrugged. They said, perhaps it was filed elsewhere. It was not, it was removed. I leaned forward. Why would someone remove the comparison sheet instead of changing it? Noah swallowed. Because it was too clear. It showed the overpriced bid. It showed the numbers side by side. If you want to steer a committee, you do not want a sheet that makes steering obvious. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. Indeed, continue. Noah's voice steadied as he spoke, the way a frightened man steadies when he finally admits what he has been carrying. The committee is being steered toward approving an overpriced contract, he said. Quietly, quickly. It is all polite. No threats, no shouting, just constant emphasis on urgency, on moving forward, on not delaying progress. Wolfe nodded once. Polite corruption, as Miss Grant observed. Noah blinked. She said that. She did, Wolfe replied. You will now tell me who is steering. Noah's mouth tightened. I cannot prove it. I did not ask for proof, Wolfe said. I asked for a name. Noah hesitated. Bradford Vale is always pushing. He keeps calling. He keeps suggesting language. He keeps helpfully revising drafts. But he is not my supervisor. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Your supervisor is, Noah swallowed, Angela Pruitt. She runs the administrative side. She dismissed me when I raised concerns. How? Wolfe asked. Noah's face tightened. I told her the minutes were being changed. She smiled and said, Noah, you are conscientious. That is why we like you. Then she said I was imagining patterns. Then after that, she began monitoring my work, not openly, helpfully, checking in, asking me to send her drafts earlier, offering to take tasks off my hands. I said, monitoring is a polite word for watching. Noah nodded. Yes, if I opened a file, she appeared. If I printed something, she asked what it was. If I stayed late, she called to see if I needed anything. It was friendly and suffocating. Wolfe's eyes held his. And you feared that if you sent an email, it would be read. Yes, Noah said quickly. They have access. They can request logs. They can check shared drives. Even private emails feel unsafe if you are inside a committee office with shared systems. And letters, Wolfe said. Noah's hands tightened. Letters can be intercepted. Miss Grant's mail is not private. It goes through a building, a superintendent, a lobby, people with keys. Wolfe nodded once. Therefore you chose a blank postcard as a signal, silence as safety. Noah leaned forward slightly, eager now to justify the method that had embarrassed him. It is not safety, he said. It is deniability. If someone intercepts a blank postcard, they cannot accuse me of leaking. It says nothing. It is only a date. If they confront me, I can shrug. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You have discovered the virtue of cowardice. Noah flushed. I was trying to survive. Survival is reasonable, Wolfe said, and that was as close as he came to comfort. Now, the bridge. Noah nodded. The bridge at dusk is where Lydia is alone, predictable, and away from offices and mailrooms. She walks. She pauses. She is not surrounded by committee members. She is not in her building. She is outside the usual channels. Wolfe's voice was calm, a public place used for a private exchange. Yes, Noah said. And because she is predictable, I could be there without drawing attention. If I waited outside her office, it would look like stalking. On the bridge, everyone is there for some reason, I said, including the people who want to watch. Noah flinched. Yes, that is why I was careful. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, careful enough to be seen. Noah looked down. I did not intend to involve you. You did, Wolfe corrected. You mailed the card to my house, whether by error or design. Noah's face tightened. I did not mail it to your house by mistake, Noah said. I mailed it to your house on purpose, because your address was the only one I believed would be safe. I typed Mr. Nero Wolfe because I needed your help, and I couldn't risk putting anything in Lydia's mail. That was a new detail, and it landed hard. If Noah was telling the truth, then someone had done more than watch Lydia's mail. Someone had touched it, changed its destination, and sent it to Wolfe as if the brownstone were the safest dead. Drop in Manhattan, I said. So the misdelivery was not chance. Wolfe held up a hand, stopping me from piling on. We will address that shortly. Continue. Why the 14th of February? Noah inhaled. It was not romance. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Of course not. Noah looked relieved that Wolfe did not smirk. The 14th of February, Noah said, is the date when the committee chair will be out of town. I blinked. Martin Pell. Yes, Noah said. He is traveling for work. 2 days, he told us last week. He will not be available. The others will still meet, informally. Vale has been pushing for decisions then, saying we should use the time efficiently, but without Pell there, objections are easier to soften. I chose the 14th of February because it gives me a window. If I meet Lydia then, I can give her what I have before they push things through. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. So the date was not an appointment for sentiment. It was a strategic window. Yes, Noah said. A safe window. Pell away. Office quieter, fewer eyes. Wolfe nodded once. Now, what proof did you intend to bring to Miss Grant on that bridge? Noah hesitated. His hands rubbed together. A copy of the vendor comparison sheet. The one that vanished, I said. Yes, Noah replied. I made a copy the day before it disappeared. Not because I planned this, but because I needed it for my own reference. I kept it off-site. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted. Off-site. Noah nodded. In my apartment. In a book. I knew if I kept it in the file room, it could disappear too. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly, approving the caution while disapproving the fear. And you plan to hand it to Miss Grant on the bridge, Wolfe said. Yes, Noah replied. So, she could raise an objection formally, with proof. She is respected. She is precise. If she brought it to Pell, he would listen. I leaned back and felt the whole thing click into place. The blank postcard was not the message. It was a door to the message. It was the knob you turn when you cannot knock. I said it aloud. Because sometimes Wolfe needs to hear me articulate what he already knows. The blank postcard wasn't the message, I said. It was the door to the message. Wolfe looked at me with mild irritation that I had spoken, which was his usual reaction to my mouth, but his eyes held a flicker of agreement. Precisely, Wolfe said. It was a mechanism to create a private transfer without paper evidence. Mr. Keller sought to avoid proof by using silence, and yet he intended to deliver proof on the 14th of February. That is a contradiction, but it is an understandable one. Noah looked at Wolfe desperately. I needed help. I could not trust the office. I could not trust the mail. I could not trust emails. I could only trust a meeting. Wolfe's voice remained calm. And you chose a bridge. People choose bridges when they want both public cover and private threat. It is a primitive instinct. Noah swallowed. I did not want to threaten her. No, Wolfe agreed. You wanted to recruit her. You wanted her to act as your shield. That is not admirable, but it is common. Noah flushed again, but he did not protest. He was past pride now. Wolfe leaned back and folded his hands. The room was quiet except for the faint sounds of the house, Fritz moving somewhere, the city's distant noise pressing against the windows. Then Wolfe said, Mr. Keller, you will do 2 things. First, you will produce that copy of the vendor comparison sheet now, not on the 14th of February. Second, you will tell me precisely how you believe your postcard was intercepted. Noah blinked. Intercepted. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You say you took pains to avoid Miss Grant's mail. Good. Now tell me precisely why you believe her mail is watched, And by whom? If your fear is justified, we will make it useful. Noah's face went pale. I typed your label. I used a public machine. I paid cash. I mailed it in a box near the office. Wolfe nodded slowly. Then the interception likely occurred after it entered the mail stream. That suggests access to mailboxes, sorting, or building mail panels. Gavin Marsh, I said. Noah swallowed. If her building mail is watched, yes. Wolfe's gaze fixed on the postcard again. Then the sender, who could not speak normally, was correct. Paper is not safe. But he was incorrect in assuming silence would save him. Silence merely invited me. Noah's voice was small. What will you do? Wolfe's eyes lifted to meet his. I will use the invitation. Noah leaned forward. On the 14th of February you will go. Wolfe's mouth tightened, almost amused. Yes, but not in the way you intended. Noah blinked, confused. Wolfe continued. You intended a secret exchange on a bridge. I intend a public revelation in my office. The bridge will serve as bait. The brownstone will serve as the trap. I felt a familiar chill of anticipation. Wolfe was shifting from collecting to arranging. That is when cases become interesting, and for me, dangerous. I said, you want the watchers to think the meeting will happen, and then you bring them here. Wolfe nodded. Exactly. We will permit them to believe they are controlling the paper. Then we will demonstrate that they are not. Noah stared at Wolfe, then at me, as if he had stepped into a machine and realized it had gears. Wolfe's voice remained calm. Mr. Keller, you will fetch your copy of the comparison sheet at once and deliver it to Archie. He will secure it. Then you will remain available. You will not warn anyone in your office. You will not alter your routine. You will do what you have already done well. You will be unnoticed. Noah swallowed, and Lydia. Wolfe's gaze shifted to the door, as if he could see Lydia's routine path from West 35th. Miss Grant will be informed only as needed. She will not be endangered by unnecessary knowledge. The committee will be corrected, not destroyed. I prefer clean correction. Noah exhaled slowly, as if surrendering to the fact that his careful silence had finally created a room full of witnesses. I looked at the blank postcard on Wolfe's desk. The 14th of February sat there like a quiet signature. It had never been romance. It had been a timetable. It had been a window. It had been an invitation whose real purpose was to move paper without being seen. Wolfe had decided to use it, which meant someone who believed in silence was about to learn what happens when silence knocks on Nero Wolfe's door, and the door opens. Chapter 8. Meeting on the bridge the 14th of February arrived the way New York holidays always arrive, not with trumpets, but with crowds and impatience. The city had dressed itself in predictable theater, flower sellers on corners, restaurants with forced cheer, couples walking as if they were late for their own romance. Even the air had a different edge, not warmer, but more crowded with intention. Wolfe watched it all from his office window, as if it were a species he had no desire to join. At 4:30 he sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression composed, and said, "Archie, you will go to the bridge." I had known that from the moment he said he would use the invitation. Wolfe does not go to bridges at dusk. Wolfe does not go to bridges at noon. Wolfe does not go to bridges, period, unless the bridge has been moved into his office. He continued, "You will go precisely as instructed. You will not improvise, except to avoid being killed, which is permitted." "That is generous," I said. "Any other allowances?" "Yes," Wolfe replied. "Do not permit Miss Grant or Mr. Keller to be isolated. If Mr. Marsh appears, that will be sufficient confirmation. You will then remove them at once to a location where the police can be summoned without drama." "Without drama," I repeated. "On the 14th of February. "Precisely," Wolfe said. "Do not permit the city to add its nonsense to ours." I adjusted my tie, because Wolfe's seriousness always makes me feel underdressed, even when I am not. "Noah will be there," I said. Wolfe nodded. "He will arrive with the folder. He will wish to hand it to Miss Grant. You will prevent that because paper changes hands too easily on bridges. The folder will remain in your possession." "Yes, sir," I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Also, Archie, you will confirm for Miss Grant that the blank postcard came from Mr. Keller. She must not continue to believe she is being summoned by an unknown predator. Fear is a wasteful emotion. I will reassure her, I said. My presence always reassures. Wolfe's mouth tightened. It does not, but your words may. He pushed a small slip of paper toward me. It was an address and a telephone number, not the brownstone, a cafe near the Manhattan end of the bridge. You will take them there, Wolfe said. Inspector Kramer will be waiting for your call. I have already notified him to be available at dusk. He grumbled. That is his method of cooperation. I pocketed the slip. You called Kramer without telling me. I am capable, Wolfe said. That is my line, I told him. He ignored me, as usual. Fritz appeared with my coat, because Fritz has perfect timing and believes men who go out should do so properly dressed. He handed it to me with the solemnity of a priest arming a soldier. Be careful, Archie, Fritz said. I always am, I said. Which was again not entirely true, but close enough to be polite. At 5:30 I left the brownstone and took a cab downtown. The driver had a small plastic heart dangling from the mirror, which made me feel as if the whole city was conspiring to mock our case. By the time I reached the bridge, dusk was beginning. The skyline was turning from grey to a bruised purple. The lights along the bridge were coming on, one by one, like a slow performance, and the river below was already swallowing reflection. I walked up onto the pedestrian path and headed for our lamppost. The crowd was thicker than usual for a cold February evening. Romance brings people out even when their hands freeze. Tourists were still there too, because tourists treat every day as a holiday. There were vendors selling cocoa, men selling flowers, and a violinist whose music sounded like it had been rehearsed on a subway platform. I positioned myself near the lamppost without leaning like I owned it. I stood slightly aside, as if I was simply admiring the view and waiting for someone who had promised something foolish. Lydia Grant arrived at her usual time, which was the first confirmation that she had not been spooked into changing her routine. She walked steadily, paused at the lamppost, looked downriver for her exact few seconds, then turned her head and saw me. Her eyes narrowed. You again. Happy the 14th of February, I said. Her mouth tightened. I do not celebrate. Neither does Wolfe, I said. That is why I'm here. She stepped closer, voice low so the crowd could not steal it. Is this necessary? It is, I said. And before we do anything else, you should know something. The blank postcard was not sent by a stranger. Her eyes sharpened. Then by whom? Noah Keller, I said. Junior clerk at your committee. She stiffened, not fear, alertness. The same kind of readiness she had shown when I mentioned the postcard image before. Noah, she murmured. Yes, I said. He bought 5 of the bridge cards. He mailed at least 1. He used a blank card because he believed normal communication was unsafe. Lydia exhaled through her nose. Of course he did. Noah would rather signal than speak. He is careful, almost timid. Timid people see dangers early, I said. She looked past me at the walkway. Is he coming? He should, I replied, and when he arrives we will not linger. Wolfe's instructions are clear. We confirm, we collect, we leave. Lydia's eyes narrowed. Wolfe is not coming. No, I said. He remains where logic is comfortable. I remain where cold air is unavoidable. She almost smiled, but it vanished quickly. What are we looking for? A habit, I said. What habit? Interception, I replied. Lydia's gaze shifted down the walkway. You think my superintendent will show? I do, I said. If he has been watching your mail, he has also been watching your routine. Today is a date on a blank card. That is not just a date. It is a lure. Lydia's shoulders tightened slightly. If he appears, what then? Then it is no longer a suspicion, I said. It is proof of habit. At 6:10, Noah Keller arrived. He moved like a man who would rather be invisible, but has decided visibility is the lesser danger. He wore a dark coat and carried himself carefully, shoulders slightly hunched. His eyes flicked around the walkway, checking faces, checking space, checking for anyone who might be watching. His hand was inside his coat near his chest, as if holding something in place. He approached the lamppost and stopped, breathing shallowly. "Miss Grant," he said. "Mr. Goodwin." Lydia looked at him, and something in her eyes softened, not into trust but into recognition. "Noah, you should not have done this here." "No," Noah said quickly, "but I did not know where else. I could not risk the office. I could not risk your building. I could not even risk your email." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "Did you send me the blank postcard?" Noah swallowed. "Yes, I did. I am sorry. I thought you would understand. It was a signal." Lydia's voice was flat. "You frightened me." Noah flinched. "I did not mean to. I meant to warn you. I stepped in gently because Wolfe had instructed me to stop fear from wasting time." "You have confirmed it," I said. "Good, now we do the next part. Noah, you have a folder." Noah's eyes widened slightly. Then he nodded. "Yes." He began to pull his hand from inside his coat, and I saw the corner of a plain manila folder. Before he could bring it fully out, Lydia's gaze shifted sharply past him. Her face tightened. I turned. At the far end of the bridge, near the Manhattan side, a man in a grey coat had appeared. Tall, plain hat. Phone in hand. He moved slowly, as if strolling, as if coincidence had brought him onto the bridge, at exactly the time a blank postcard date suggested a meeting. Gavin Marsh, Lydia's superintendent. He was not looking directly at us. He was looking at the skyline, the water, the notice board, the way a man looks when he wants to appear harmless. But his pace had direction. His direction was toward the lamppost. Wolfe's plan, such as it was, had worked neatly. The superintendent's presence did not just suggest interception. It proved routine interference. A man does not drift onto a bridge at dusk on a holiday and head toward one lamppost, unless the lamppost means something. Noah's voice went thin. "Who is that?" Lydia's jaw tightened. "My superintendent." Noah's face went pale. "He followed me." "Or he followed the postcard," I said. "Either way, he is here." Noah began to pull the folder out again, as if he wanted to hand it off quickly and be done. I stopped him with a hand. "Not here," I said. Marsh was closer now, still pretending to browse a notice board, still checking his phone too often. He was doing the same rehearsal I had seen in other people. Casual as disguise, time checks as tell. A step slightly forward, placing myself between Marsh and the other two. I did it casually, as Wolfe would have done if Wolfe had legs and less pride. I leaned on the railing and looked downriver as if admiring the view, which meant my body was now a wall that required Marsh to either pass close or alter course. He slowed. His eyes flicked to me, then away. He recognized me. Recognition tightened his mouth. His hand tightened around his phone. "Evening," he said as he drew near, voice too friendly. "Evening," I replied, not moving. He stopped beside me, pretending to look down at the river too. His breath came a bit fast. People who plan order do not enjoy improvising. "Cold," he said. "It is February," I replied. He nodded, then glanced past me toward Lydia and Noah, who stood behind my shoulder. He tried to make the glance casual. It was not. Lydia's voice was sharp. "Gavin, what are you doing here?" Marsh's smile twitched. "Oh, hey Lydia, didn't know you were out. I was just walking on the bridge." Lydia said, "At dusk, on a holiday." Marsh's smile tightened. "I like the view." "Since when?" Lydia demanded. Noah's voice was small. "He is your superintendent." "Yes," Lydia said, eyes hard. Marsh looked at Noah for the first time, and his expression flickered. He did not know Noah. "That mattered," I said. "Mr. Marsh, do you often enjoy the view when tenants meet friends?" His smile faltered. "What?" You linger in Lydia's hall, I said. You deny tampering before anyone accuses, and now you appear on a bridge as if you were invited by the weather. Marsh's face reddened. You don't know what you're talking about. That is the first honest sentence you have said to me, I replied. Lydia stepped forward slightly, eyes locked on him. Have you been intercepting my mail? Marsh's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted. He was trapped between denial and the fact that his presence here made denial ridiculous. I said quietly, This is enough, Gavin. You have proven the habit. Noah looked at me, confused. What do we do? We leave, I said. Marsh's voice rose too quickly. Leave? Yeah, you should. You're causing a scene. There is no scene, I said. There is a bridge and a cold wind and a man who has shown up where he should not be. Marsh's hand tightened around his phone. I'm going to call the police. Please do, Lydia said, and her voice was steady now, anger turning into clarity. Tell them why you are here. Marsh's eyes widened. He did not call. I turned slightly, keeping my body between him and the other two, and nodded toward the stairway down to the street. Come on, I said to Lydia and Noah. We are going to warm up. There is a cafe nearby. They serve coffee that will not taste like punishment. Noah clutched his folder inside his coat. Lydia nodded once. Quickly, we started walking, not running, because running turns a quiet extraction into a chase, and Wolfe had instructed me to avoid drama. Marsh followed for a few steps, then stopped. He stood there watching us go, phone still in hand, his face tight with frustration. The crowd swallowed him and made him look ordinary again, which is exactly how he wanted to look. We descended the stairs to the Manhattan side, stepped onto the street, and walked briskly to the cafe Wolfe had selected. It was small, warm, and crowded with people trying to turn the 14th of February into something it rarely is. The smell of coffee and pastries hit us like safety. I chose a table near the back, where we could see the door. That is a habit Wolfe has taught me. Always know who enters. I sat, and Lydia sat across from me, coat still on. Noah sat beside her, shoulders still hunched, as if the warmth could not reach his fear yet. All right, I said. Now we call the police without drama. Lydia's eyes narrowed. You mean Inspector Kramer? Yes, I said. Wolfe has already grumbled him into readiness. I stepped to the counter, used the cafe phone, and called Kramer. When he answered, he sounded as if he had been waiting in a bad mood, which is his natural state. It's Goodwin, I said. We are at the cafe on the slip Wolfe gave you. We have Lydia Grant and Noah Keller. We also have a superintendent who just showed up on the bridge, as if he had a calendar. You may want to come, Kramer grunted. On my way. I returned to the table. Noah was already pulling the folder from his coat, now that we were indoors. Show it, I said. Noah opened it with careful hands and slid a single sheet across the table. Vendor comparison, bids side by side, notes in a narrow column, totals at the bottom, but something was wrong. The totals looked too clean. The font in the totals line was slightly different, as if retyped. The numbers themselves had an odd shape. A 3 that looked like a different 3, a 7 with a different slant. The kind of difference you notice if you have stared at enough typed pages, which Noah had. Lydia leaned in, eyes scanning fast. An editor's eyes are like a blade. They cut through fluff and go straight to what matters. These totals are altered, Lydia said. Noah nodded quickly. Yes, the original totals were different. The expensive bidder's number was higher. They retyped the totals to make it look closer to the others. And they removed objections from the minutes, Lydia murmured, eyes narrowing, so the paper trail would support the wrong decision. I tapped the sheet gently. This is why the blank postcard exists, because someone believes regular paper isn't safe. So he tried to move proof by hand. Lydia's eyes hardened, and because someone else thinks they can steal proof from my mailbox. Noah's voice was small. I thought the bridge would be safe. It was safer than your office, I said. But not safe enough. Your superintendent came because he is used to watching paper move. He could not resist. Lydia looked toward the cafe door. He will deny it. Yes, I said. After he is accused, that will be progress. She gave a short laugh with no humor. So the blank postcard did speak. It did, I agreed. Not with words, with a meeting, with a habit, with the fact that the man who denies tampering before accusation could not resist showing up where paper could not be stolen. Noah stared at the sheet. What happens now? What happens now, I said, is that Wolfe gets his office gathering without leaving his chair. Lydia looked at me sharply. He is going to confront the committee. He will correct it, I said, cleanly, quietly, with prevented harm instead of headlines. Noah's hands trembled slightly. They will fire me. Wolfe does not like people who punish truth, I said. He will arrange things. That was not a promise I could make with certainty, but it was a reasonable guess. Wolfe can be ruthless when he believes decency has been used as camouflage. Inspector Kramer arrived 10 minutes later, filling the café with the air of a man who resents pastries and sentiment. He took one look at Lydia, one look at Noah, and then he looked at the sheet on the table. Is that it? He demanded. That is it, Lydia said. Kramer grunted. Let me see. He examined the page with a grimace that suggested he preferred crimes with fists. Paper crimes annoy him because they require reading. These numbers, he said finally, were typed. Yes, Lydia replied, and the superintendent followed us to the bridge. Kramer looked at me. You got a name, Gavin Marsh, I said. Superintendent loves order, loves stamps. Shows up on bridges when he thinks paper will move. Kramer nodded once. All right, we'll talk to him. He turned back to Lydia and Noah. You two stay available. You'll need to give statements. Lydia's expression was steady. I will, Noah swallowed. I will, Kramer grunted again, then left as if the cafe's warmth offended him. When he was gone, Lydia looked at the blank postcard I had placed on the table, date still quiet on the cardstock. So, this is how it started, she said. Yes, I replied. An invitation disguised as nothing. She touched the edge of the card with one finger, thoughtful. It is strange. It feels harmless. It feels like a tourist item. That is why it works, I said. Ordinary at a glance. Noah looked at it too. I thought it would protect me. It got you here, I said. That is a kind of protection. Lydia's eyes lifted to mine. And what about the people steering the committee? I smiled slightly. That is Wolfe's part. He will bring them into his office, close the door, and make them answer questions they did not plan for. He prefers truth to drama. Outside, dusk deepened into night, and the city continued to celebrate a holiday that rarely celebrates back. Inside the café, on a small table, a blank postcard sat beside a sheet of altered numbers. The postcard had no message, but it had spoken anyway. It had spoken by forcing a meeting, by exposing a habit, and by delivering proof into hands that would not let it be stolen again. Paper is fragile. In New York, it is also dangerous. And sometimes, the only safe place for paper is not a mailbox, not an office, not a file room, but the moment it is held by the right people, under the right light, with someone watching the door.